What's going on, guys? Welcome to the ASTROLABE, brought to you by King Pilled. Thank you, Rip, in the chat. Smash that like as you're on your way in. Hit the like button. Reward us in a little bit of internet currency, and then you can also reward us with some actual currency as well if you'd like. You can drop in a super chat or become a member of the King Pilled, a channel member. It's $5 a month. And it means that you get to have a cool little green name in the chat instead of just the boring gray name. Green for money. I see Wit in the chat. You got the green name. How you doing today, guys? We got a whole bunch of stuff today. We're going to watch a few different things. This one's going to be, I think, a little less explicitly politically oriented. We got some schizo stuff on this one. Since the show yesterday, I've been going down the Ashton Forbes rabbit hole, and oh man, there's some fun stuff going. There was some fun stuff going on. This is getting me back to where my mind was focused before the last 2 or 3 weeks on I don't know what you would call it, like off limits physics, or it's connected with dark tech, and there is stuff coming, folks. I don't know what to say. I don't know how to put it. I don't know what's coming. That's kind of the thing, is I don't know exactly what's coming. I know what it is correspondent to. Like anti-gravity, plasma, zero matter, 0-point energy, all these different things, which have been talked about for a long time. This has been people have been pursuing a lot of these things for a long time, but it's becoming increasingly evident that there's some momentum building. We're getting more and more evidence, more and more people digging into it, which is kind of I think a function of the internet and social media. And we went through the age a couple of years ago. We were coming out of the back end of the censorship age, where anything that could be adjacently attached to Trump or right wing or conservative or Christian or anything like that was under assault. But that is no longer the case. The censorship has died down significantly. It's like undeniably so. And lots of people are just digging into various different circles of study and reality, and they're bringing back some very interesting stuff. So this Friday evening, there's we're going to do the schizo stream in the King Pill Discord. And I think the stuff we're going to look at is some of this Ashton Forbes stuff related to the Malaysian flight, MH370, I think it was called. There really seems to be something here that is completely mind-bending. I don't know what to do with it, but I want to put it in front of some of you guys, some of my peeps. I want to put it in front of you guys and see what you do with it. So if you want to be a part of the schizo stream, it'll be like a voice chat in Discord, where we'll just play a video and sit around and chit chat about it. And you could kind of imagine it as being like a digital man cave where we just sit and we watch schizo streams. So if you'd like to do that, go to kingpill.com, sign up, join the King Pill Discord. Any subscription level will get you access to the schizo stream. Anti-gravity. What are you, a gravity phobic or something? I am. I don't want to be held to the ground. I don't want to be held together. I want to spray across everywhere. Gray name tribe proud, Mr. Westford. Speaking of gray tribe, let me I didn't plan on this, but let me show you guys something that you need to go watch. Let me find my history here. So I've got a few different things here for you guys to go check out. And one of them, I think I'm just going to have to do a stream on this, just going through this video. So that would be this one, brand new biology, Trump, Biden, and January 6th. This is a hour and 42 minutes, and it should have been like 5 hours. I think a lot of you are probably going to have a hard time with some of what he says, but I haven't seen a more clearly distilled picture of the PayPal mafia, the gray America, gray tribe, whatever Silicon Valley. I haven't seen a more clearly distilled view of their perspective than this conversation. It's this one right here between, I'm not going to play it right now, but on the Moment of Zen podcast. So it's Eric Torenberg and Balaji Srinivasan. And the way they view the world is it's a little bit of a model breaker. This is why I'm saying we're watching the realization of a completely new political, not an ideology, but like a political perspective, political viewpoint. And it has a lot in common with us in a lot of ways. It also has a lot that's not in common with us. But I'm not describing this as a point of advocacy. This is what's happening. This is what's coming. And it's a complete political realignment. Now, not everyone who is, I don't know, Silicon Valley adjacent is going to be lockstep with Balaji here. Balaji is probably like the vanguard. He's probably the furthest, the closest to us of all of them. But he really has a deep understanding of what's motivating these people. So I got to figure out a time when we can just sit down and go through it. It's an hour and 42 minutes. I got to figure out how to do this without getting the channel taken down. But I really want to make sure that we go through it. I think it might be posted on X, which would be excellent. Excellent. Yeah, so you can go watch it before that if you want, or you could just wait till I watch it and go through it. So here's another Ashton Forbes one that I was watching yesterday. This is another conversation you guys absolutely need to go listen to, exposing who was really behind Trump's assassination. Little clickbait title there. Tom Luongo. Tom was just in fine form. So then I also watched a couple interesting, these are like live readings by Michael Millerman on J.D. Vance on the right and Curtis Yarvin and J.D. Vance. They read a couple of the stuff we've read on here. But nothing super groundbreaking, but they were interesting listens. And then Garen Thumb and Brandon Herrera had some good videos on recreating the assassination attempt of Donald Trump. And then what was the other one? Oh yeah, Jack Posobiec and Tucker Carlson was really good. And then Bryson DeChambeau went and did a round of golf with Trump. And I've only seen some clips from it, but it is just so good. In fact, actually, I will. We're going to call an audible here and play a clip. Hold on. I got to let my cat out of the office. I didn't realize she was in here. What's up, Taylor Brown? Can't hang out long, but wanted to wish a happy Wallabara and Olivara to you. Same to you, man. If you don't understand that, you have to be in the King Pill Discord. We were having a fun chat with our token Muslim yesterday. All right, let me pull up one of these Trump and Bryson DeChambeau videos, because it's just I could not love this man more. Man, I tweet too much. I'm scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. Okay, here we go. This one right here. Shout out to Whiskey Priors, a powerful mutual of mine. He says, "That's it. It's over. I'm voting Trump." He giggles at shit like, "That's 2 holes now the president has gotten inside me."
Oh, come on. Come back. I thought that was going to come back more. That's 2 holes now that the president's gotten inside me. That's unbelievable. Inside me. That's unbelievable. Inside me. That's unbelievable. Inside me.
That chuckle.
That's unbelievable. Come on. Now that the president's gotten inside me. That's unbelievable.
Oh, man. How much frickin' fun would it be to go play a round of golf with Donald Trump? Just... I don't know if he would say that's what she said. Like, the dude's almost 80. If he knows that's what she said enough to just pull it out like that, that would be... I would die. He said it in his own way. President Beavis, yeah. He's like, I know that laugh. I haven't had the chance to watch that video yet, but the whole thing. I've just seen some clips here and there. But the two of them played a scramble, and they were trying to shoot 22 under, so 50 strokes, and they did it. Was there something else? Got some interesting retweets here. I might hit. Andrew Torba says another big part of the Silicon Valley contrarian defection to Trump is AI. They need energy, a lot of it, and they also want to steer regulation to be friendly to innovation, or better yet, prevent any from happening at all. More broadly, Elon wants to ensure that Sam Altman and OpenAI don't become the government's go-to AI service. Let him cook. Yes, if you listen to Elon talking to Jordan Peterson, or the one I've mentioned a couple of times now, Mark Andreessen and Ben Horowitz, the recent episode they dropped, with I think it was 5 days ago or so, you can see how critical this is to them in the way that they talk about this. They're speaking in extremely existential terms. In fact, actually, I had said, I did a tweet about this, and I think I'll just read that here. We're adapting on the fly. All right, here it is. So, first of all, I came across this deep in a thread under Paul Graham. So Paul Graham's the guy who founded Y Combinator, the startup accelerator, one of the most influential organizations in the world. The guy is brilliant. He's genuinely very smart, very, very smart, knows the world really well. So deep in these replies, he's very blue-pilled. He's very, very normie. So in these replies, this guy, Michael Hook, says they're not concerned with winning the election based on real votes. And Paul Graham says, don't tell me you're one of those people who actually believe the 2020 election was stolen. And Michael says, I can't know for sure, but have seen enough concerning things reported to be skeptical. It seems more likely that some questionable things happened than that the right made the entire scandal up. And Paul Graham says, you know how you can be sure? If there had been some kind of fraud, Republican leaders like Mitch McConnell and Mike Pence would have made an issue of it. Do you think they would have quietly lost the presidency for their party if there was actual fraud? This was just, I mean, I've followed Paul Graham for a while. I reckon probably, I don't know, 8 years. I recognize, I know how he thinks. I know this isn't like surprising to me per se, but at the same time, it also blows my mind. I said, how is it that I, some random dude in Texas, understand the macro political landscape better than the dude who founded Y Combinator? He's clearly got vastly more experience with the political system than I do, particularly on the micro level. This is a weird thing I've discovered while studying the PayPal Mafia / Gray America world. A lot of these people are nigh unto turbo normies politically, with genuine self-delusions about neutrality or centrism, despite having expansive personal experience in the halls of government. They'll have congressmen and federal chairs on speed dial, yet sincerely believe things like Mitch McConnell or Mike Pence would have stepped in to prevent election fraud. It's easy to knee-jerk attribute this to some type of playing dumb for the public, but it's far more parsimonious to recognize that they simply don't see beyond the kayfabe. You even see this with guys who are signaling hard toward us like Musk, Sachs, or Andreessen, which means there's something real about even the kayfabe. When enough people believe a lie, it becomes a sort of truth. I don't know, really naive, sort of neutral posture that these guys have. They're like sort of their default factory settings, which I go on to say that here. It's actually, it almost makes that world real. The world in which, this is all these different people in these political parties are just, advocating for the interests of their parties, and that politics operates on the level that the regime press says it does. There's almost a degree to which that is true, that the people who are actually involved in all of these different things, by and large, actually do see the world that way. You could, like, Tucker Carlson is one of the most preeminent examples of someone who has been extracting himself from this worldview in real time, and you can tell that it's authentic. You can tell it's sincere. I've got something about Tucker's sincerity here in just a minute. He lived in DC and just swam in those waters around people who all are relentlessly hammered with this propaganda for his entire life. And when you're relentlessly being hammered with that propaganda, it has an effect. The people actually come to believe it. So I said, you even see this with, okay, I already read that. It's easy for me to remember when I saw the world in similar terms because it wasn't that long ago. Much of what appears to be deep ideological belief or covert conspiracy is really just factory settings. They're just naive default boomer liberals. And that's not a condemnation of them. The programming has been so sustained for so long across so many domains that it's difficult to break from it, and perhaps even more so for those closest to the halls of power. This is what makes the rise of the tech bros significant. It takes a lot to rouse a normie from his slumber, especially when he's close to the source. This isn't a cynical power play, though it's definitely a self-serving power grab. It's personal for them, and they want to see the machine entirely purged of their enemies. See Musk getting deadly serious talking about his son to Jordan Peterson, or Andreessen getting really agitated talking about the idiocy of the Biden admin's posture toward AI, crypto, energy, tax structure, et al., to the point where Horowitz has to gently tell him to chill. They're on a podcast. Thiel put his cards on the table when he nuked Gawker orbit. They're thinking and speaking about this in legitimately apocalyptic terms and clearly see it as an existential crisis. These men swing a massive stick, both in Silicon Valley and in D.C. Cue the Trump chuckle. They're nearly heads of states themselves in terms of their influence. They serve as mimetic models for huge swaths of the professional world, directly or indirectly, which can be seen perhaps most clearly in the pathological apoplexy they inspire in their critics. They're self-consciously, implicitly identifying themselves as enemies of the regime on the grounds that it is the regime, which means they're shopping for a new government that suits their interests. Strategically, the obvious response is to do whatever we can to provide them with that government on terms they're willing to accept. Begin watching them as turbo normies going through the anti-regime onboarding process, and a lot of what they do will make a lot of sense. The world they want to see is absolutely one we can work with while we're building something better. So TLDR, extremely influential factions of gray America, or maybe orange America is better, are shedding their political normie status because they're mad. The Paul Grahams don't get it, but they'll get on board eventually because they won't matter until they do. I'm going to play around with this orange America thing. Like, I think you got a double meaning here between, well, that's cool. I didn't know it would do that. Between Bitcoin, like orange America, and then Trump, like MAGA, being identified with the orange man. I think Orange America kind of captures that this developing political ideology or political. It's not an ideology because it's not ideological, but it's a like a paradigm, a view of the world that is actually pretty. It's almost characterized by its non-ideological nature. Like, if anything, these people aren't ideological enough. It would be nice if they had a little more of a guiding principle that is something beyond just, accelerate or growth, or if there was something a little more tangible to it. But anyways, Javier Oliva says, the only objection to the forbidden physics thing, the lore says Tesla showed Rockefeller his free energy tech, and when told there was no meter for charging people, he said no. Yes. Given some of the understandings and technological developments that were being made 80 to 100 years ago, and seeing how much the world has transformed since then without directly tapping into some of this development, leads me to believe that what we believe about the world has been heavily neutered for like a century. But it hasn't been neutered for us. There's been the people behind the scenes who actually have access to some of this understanding of the world, and even the access to the technology itself, have been living in a completely different world than the rest of us. But it's just a matter of time before these worlds are forced together. And I think part of what is happening now is the table is being set for these worlds to join. You could call it like the breakaway civilization, or the like deep military tech, or whatever. There's this like off the books thing that's been happening behind the scenes that we've only gotten little blips into our reality. But now I think these realities are going to get smashed together. And, is it being done cynically? I don't know. I don't think it matters. I think it's inevitable that these sorts of realities have to collide. the dark reality has to be revealed. And I don't think that it being dark makes it inherently bad. It's just that the revelation process for fallen humans is tumultuous and difficult. Yeah, the weird Tesla guy on Twitter, foppish Victorian LARPer. He's like the inverse of Patrick Mahomes. He looks and sounds like Patrick Mahomes, except he's instead of being a like multi-millionaire sports star, he's some like goofy little guy who intentionally lives as if it was 100 years ago. But he's very like he's LARPing. He has this character that he's embedded in that I don't know how much it's intentional, how much of it is like just severe autism. But the stuff that he's doing is also legit. He's absolutely trying to carry Tesla's mantle. Let's see. Okay. So let's get a funny one here real quick. This guy is this is my new favorite, the guy that roasts mailboxes. I love this shit. I absolutely love the ways that people come up with to be creative on the internet.
I'm out here today talking shit to mailboxes on my rollerblade. So when I'm done with my Big Mac, I put my tray on top. You McDonald's looking piece of shit. Mailbox, more like this guy's litter box. You piece of shit. Who lives here? Sally and Jack Skellington. Piece of shit. Oh, hey, Tin Man. Sorry, I haven't seen Dorothy. You heartless piece of shit.
How do these people come up with this? Like, how does this guy decide, all right, I'm going to go put on some rollerblades and zoom around the neighborhood talking shit to mailboxes? It's brilliant. And I'll bet you, let me see, did it? This is one that, you can't see. I would not be surprised if he has a massive following. That he could monetize a pretty massive following just with this. That is one example of how if you're having a hard time getting ahead, sometimes you don't need to think real hard about it. Like, you just need to do the silliest thing that comes to mind. And that could be the breakthrough that you need to launch yourself forward. If you can do something that's just entertaining and lighthearted and super creative, there's tons of demand for content like that. And people are more than happy to launch those people into the stratosphere. You don't have to get super creative. The way you choose to look at the world, if you choose to look at the world as a place of pessimism and like there's no opportunity and everything's bad and it sucks and it's getting worse, you'll live in that world. You'll live in that world that you look at. But like by definition, you'll create that world because you're choosing to live in it. So that's the only world that you're going to experience. But if you choose to look at the world as a place of hope and opportunity and truth and beauty and goodness and love, like all of these, that's the world that you will live in because both of those worlds exist. The one that you live in is the one that you choose to focus on. Here's another funny one. I don't want to live in the world this guy's trying to live in.
Mr. Pancake, you're under arrest.
Don't move. Mr. Pancake.
Get on your belly. Get on your belly. On your belly. Roll. Get on your belly, Mr. Pancake. On your belly. In the name of the law, Pancake, get on your belly.
In the name of the law, Pancake, get on your belly.
Come on. I got one here. You kidding me? What the Give up your other hand.
You're not prepared for what's going to happen.
Am I under arrest for? Seriously. Breaking and entering. Theft.
Damaging.
Oh, God, there is a gerbil.
Oh, there's animal abuse.
What the heck?
Multiple gerbils.
In his pants.
Multiple gerbils recovered.
Come on, Mr. Pancake.
We're just advising that our suspect has multiple gerbils in his pants.
So it says an officer grabs Pancake off the bench and tells him he's under arrest. Pancake asked several times, asking what's happening, and officers told him he was under arrest for breaking and entering. As officers searched Pancake, they found 4 hamsters and bedding in his leopard-printed pajamas. There's multiple gerbils in his pants, an officer could be heard saying. Do you have any more gerbils on you? The gerbils were later identified as hamsters. The officers took pictures of the hamsters before returning him to the store. Pancake was charged for injuries was treated for injuries he suffered while allegedly breaking into one of the stores. He's charged with breaking and entering and vandalism. He is scheduled to be arraigned in court on Wednesday. I think, yeah, there you go. There's Mr. Pancake. I had this one in a. I've had this one in the queue here for a while, so wanted to drop that one in so I can get it out. All right, another one. I don't know if this one's going to make you cringe or not. This might make you feel things. This is one of the best edits I've ever seen. It's so good. I said I've seen the future and it's brighter than you know.
I apologize.
No, he's perfect.
I'm breaking all the rules. I'm breaking all the rules.
Well, I guess we might make some mistakes. Who knows?
I think one of the biggest problems we have in DC is that everyone's egos are too big.
I actually just prefer to have no titles at all.
You're opening yourself up.
I'm just being me. Let's go.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I don't know who made this, but it is so good. It is so good. How well it's cut together. There was people in the replies to this that thought it was actually real. And they're, the type of people who tend to think these types of things are real. But they were like, "What? This doesn't make sense." Euthanasia says, "This is pain, but the mythology is worth it." That's right. That's right. This is the future. We've seen it. We're creating the mythology in real time. Getting this sort of thing to go mega viral it's almost guaranteed to get in front of one of them or both of them. Imagine being one of them and seeing this. Like you think it's cringe to you? Even just the small things like the lighting on their faces. Somehow, whoever decided to put this together found interviews where it really conceivably looks like they're in the same. Look at that face. Like they're in the same room having the same conversation, and then it's edited so well together. We must create our own mythologies and force the people to live in them. All right, so here's another one. This is another white pill for you guys. A little bit of beauty for your day. And then we've got then we'll get into a little bit of Kamala stuff. So Annette Albright, who is I don't know exactly who she is, but she says, "Don't always believe what you hear about people. Get to know people for yourself." Last Thursday, as I awaited hair and makeup before my speech at the Republican National Convention, a man entered the room, and I watched as people began to excitedly gather around him. I was seated alone at a table in the back as I was engulfed in nerves and contemplating all the possible mistakes I could make in front of a national audience. This man made his way to the back of the room, grabbed a bottle of water, and asked me was anyone sitting in the empty chair at my table. I told him no, and he sat down. He asked me if I was a speaker, and I told him yes. He asked me if I was nervous, and I replied yes. Nervous was written all over my face. The man quickly grabbed my hands and began to pray. After the prayer, he gave me tips on how to speak to the audience, and he assured me that I had this and I was going to be awesome. After about 15 minutes, I felt comfortable enough to tell the man that my coworker is a huge fan and would he mind taking a pic. The man looks at me and laughs. He immediately reached for my phone and said, "We're going to make a video." We made the video, and it was epic. That man was Tucker Carlson. So you can see on her camera here, it made a 21-second video. I've been telling you guys that Tucker is legit. I think a lot of people are really hesitant to look at him as like living in DC all his life and having, once wanting to join the CIA and all this. And they see him now as some sort of like super subversive deep agent. And all you have to do is just sit and watch him and listen to him talk. And if you're if you have the slightest bit of intuition about and like ability to read body language and like just retain a number of experiences in your own head at the same time rather than just reacting off of each individual one, it's so obvious that Tucker is completely sincere. He is probably one of the most transparent, authentic people in the public eye. And he goes and he does something like this. This is like, there is a lot of power in being someone of Tucker's class and personality and behaving like this in public. I don't know who this, let me see real quick if I can figure out who this chick is, because the subtext of what she's writing is that she didn't care for him too much prior to this. Annette Albright. She did speak at the RNC, so let's see. All right, she ran for election to the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Board of Education at Large in North Carolina. Says she's nonpartisan, lives in Charlotte, earned an associate's degree in corrections and juvenile services, a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, and a master's degree in organizational management and leadership development. Worked for North Carolina Department of Corrections and with the Mecklenburg County Land Use and Environmental Services Agency and Child Support Enforcement. So she doesn't. It seems like she's relatively non-ideological and with the background that she, or not committed to a particular party, and with the background that she has, she's got she's not someone who would be set up to be Tucker sympathetic, but now doing something like this had made an indelible mark on her that she's not going to forget. And it's an accumulation of these little experiences where people who might be inclined to just buy into the regime narrative about everything, each time they have a little experience like this with someone who breaks that calculus for them, we're in an era right now where everything is kind of tossed up in the air, and there's plenty of undecideds out there, not just in an election in an electoral sense, but in a cultural sense. They're undecided. They're kind of like the default culture that they've just kind of swam with is getting so deranged that even normies are starting to notice, and they feel a little politically homeless, a little culturally homeless. There's a great opportunity to give them a new vision and make them feel at home with a new category of people. But it just requires that you be a human being. You be decent. Y'all see RFK Jr. accusing Vance of being with the CIA. This is interesting. Something that may have been TikTok fake news. Can't find the articles. Okay, so whether it's true or not, this is something that what's his name? Tom Luongo mentioned in that interview that I told you guys to go watch. He said, if you'll notice, RFK Jr. went to Mar-a-Lago, and I'm taking his word for it because I trust Tom. I haven't gone and looked this all up myself, and I wasn't tracking it when it happened, but I'm just passing on what he said. He said, if you were tracking this, you would have noticed that RFK went to Mar-a-Lago and then came away from that getting super shit lib. He started getting real like lib pandering. So Tom's thesis here is that this is RFK intentionally skewing left to undermine the Democrat vote. And perhaps this was something that may have also been discussed in the conversation Trump had with him after he was assassinated. You know, it was framed as like this is him asking RFK to be his VP, and he may have asked him to be his VP. Either one of these could be true, but I think the resolution of the conversation was an agreed upon mutual strategy going forward, where RFK is going to now explicitly campaign to undermine the Democrat vote. So don't freak the fuck out if you see RFK saying some crazy stuff. Like if he was saying that Vance is part of the CIA, then this is him positioning himself as a viable alternative for people who don't want to vote for Trump or Vance, but don't want to vote for Kamala. RFK is gonna run toward the left, specifically as an electoral strategy. I think that there's a lot of viability to that. Kayfabe, exactly, Kate. Just more kayfabe. Don't buy the kayfabe. Anytime you see something that challenges your priors, just hold off for a second, take a step back, and try to consider what sort of kayfabe could be at work here, because there is a shit ton of kayfabe going on right now with everyone all across the board. The kayfabe has never been more intense. And so one of the things that RFK posited is that perhaps you're going to see RFK be, or this is one of the things that Luongo posited, is perhaps you're going to see RFK be a some sort of cabinet member, attorney general, or head of the FDA or something like that. Like he's gonna be promised some sort of a position that allows him to go after the parts of the regime that he doesn't like. So we've got, let me see if I'd opened this tab. Okay, I did. So I don't need to look it up. Speaking of Kamala, it's been really funny watching Lomez losing his shit over Kamala being normalized, being mainstreamed. He says, I've swallowed so much cringe, bad takes, gaslighting, and cynical bald-faced lies in my life that it just doesn't faze me anymore. Biden has more than 2 brain cells to rub together? Whatever. The freest and fairest election of all time? Fine. WMDs? Why not? But if they try to tell me Kamala is cool, fun, quirky, why not, smart, accomplished, hot, anything other than nuclear-grade, frumpy HR longhouse, deepest, darkest, Vanna Black coal, I'm going to seriously chimp. I can't take this. I have my limits. And Roland Dubois says, you just said that you will be unburdened by what has been. And Lomez says, I'm going to die. This was a couple days ago before the Kamala campaigning really kicked in earnest. So yesterday, everyone was suddenly like, what the fuck is going on? My timeline has suddenly been inundated by Kamala horseshit. All of a sudden, the libs are just absolutely turbocharged, and they're going ham. You've got the David Frenches of the world out there talking about how, there's such the power of hope and belief that I see when I recognize these poor libs who were felt trapped by Biden, but now there's this exultation, this hope, and this relief. Fuck these people. But this should be obvious. It should be obvious what's happening. Number one, this is an indication of just how demoralizing Biden was. That even Kamala Harris is giving these libs their exultant, we're free of him. Now we have a great candidate. Now we have someone with energy, someone we can meme with really easily. They're having a similar kind of burst of ecstasy as to what we had a week ago. Now, it seems absurd to suggest that Biden being taken out of the way and replaced with Kamala, in their eyes, would be equivalent to what we experienced last Saturday, or Saturday before last. But it's true. That's genuinely what it's been like for them. So they're getting this big burst of energy. But do you notice that big, huge surge, that rush, that emotional rush, that vibe that we were riding off of for a week, it's kind of died away a little bit. Now you have to kind of consciously cultivate it. You have to remind yourself of it. And when you think about it and you remind yourself of it, you're like, fuck these people. They tried to kill Trump on national TV. It's very obvious that this was a coordinated op by some people. I don't know who they are, but fuck them, whoever they are. When you kind of look back and you tap into it, you get that back. You still have it. But you're not just riding high like you were. I've seen a bunch of different people talking about this. I feel it. So this is what they're experiencing. Now think of how authentic and sincere what we were experiencing was compared to how inauthentic and insincere what they're experiencing has to be. It's not going to last. It's a quick high, but it's not going to last. So I saw people who were freaking out about this yesterday, starting to get blackpilled, starting to get demoralized again. And Kryptos, shout out to Kryptos. He quote tweeted this from The Hill. Beyonce allows Harris to use song Freedom for campaign. And he said, there will be so much propaganda, you will get so tired of all the propaganda. And I said, the intensity of the propaganda is a strong signal toward the desperation of the propagandists. It's intended to demoralize you. Recognizing that reality should energize you. Why do they want to demoralize you? Because you're a threat. They see themselves as the underdogs. They recognize that they're losing. So they're bootstrapping themselves, trying to bootstrap themselves into optimism and hope, and they are pressing their advantage. But the more intense the propaganda, like, why do you need propaganda? You need propaganda to make people think something that they don't already think. So if you have really intense over-the-top propaganda, that's only produced by someone who thinks they have a tremendous hill to overcome. So that should be energizing to you. Choosing to be demoralized by that is just laying over and dying. Why would you just roll over and die? Dissident Tech on Twitter says, the same media frenzy, full court press, AstroTurf campaign to pump up Kamala is so off the rails insane that normies I run into are seeing behind the veil. Obviously fake, same messaging as Joe's competence. Nobody IRL thinks she's great. She is one of the most unpopular people of all time. She's probably more unpopular than Hillary. She merits less respect than Hillary. It's like, quote tweeted him, I said, this big opening salvo by the Kamala campaign is targeted at energizing her base and demoralizing Trump's base. Unfortunately for them, her base is comprised of insufferable mentally ill people and Trump's base is comprised of normal people. So what energizing her base actually means is making insufferable mentally ill people get really annoying to normal people. As long as we keep up our will, keep the pressure on the regime and refuse to blackpill, their initial jolt of fake energy will wear off and doom will sink back in for them. Now, I think, did I have another one on this? No, I had to change the subject. So, actually, this is going to segue in beautifully. There are a couple of Republican ads now related to this. First of all is one on Kamala, and then another one from a Republican gubernatorial candidate from Missouri, Bill Eigel. You guys will like that one. So first of all, this is the type of advertising. Let me give the introduction here. Republican operative texts me this McCormick ad and says what voters down ballot will be seeing in every Senate race from Nevada to Pennsylvania until November. So they're on their big high and everything now. But think about ordinary middle class suburban or rural Americans who are still kind of trapped by normie land. Think about them watching this ad.
Kamala Harris is inspiring and very capable. The more people get to know her, they're going to be particularly impressed by her ability.
The nonpartisan GovTrack has rated you as the most liberal senator.
I am prepared to get rid of the filibuster to pass a Green New Deal. There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking.
Would you ban offshore drilling?
Yes.
What is the solution for voters in the fossil fuel industry?
Giving the workers an ability to transition. We're not going to treat people who are undocumented across the border as criminals. That's correct.
Raise your hand if you think it should be a civil offense rather than a crime to cross the border without documentation.
Abolish ICE.
Yeah.
Is that a position you agree with?
And we need to probably think about starting from scratch.
Outdated, it is wrong-headed thinking to think that the only way you're going to get communities to be safe is to put more police officers on the street.
Would you support changing the dietary guidelines?
Yes.
The food pyramid. What for people
yes.
to reduce red meat specifically?
Yes.
People who are convicted in prison, like the Boston Marathon bomber, on death row, people who are convicted of sexual assault, they should be able to vote?
I think we should have that conversation.
We have to have a buyback program, and I support a mandatory buyback program.
So for people out there who like their insurance, well, they don't get to keep it.
Let's eliminate all of that. Let's move on.
I am opposed to any policy that would deny any human being public health, period.
The more people get to know her, they're going to be particularly impressed by her ability.
We did it, Joe.
That is a nuke of an ad. That is absolutely ruthless. I said she doesn't even have the good old Scranton boy myth to fall back on, and she's been dropping sound bites like this for years. She is profoundly unlikable. Michael Robertson said, does policy talk move anyone anymore? This is the thing about this ad and the way this ad was put together and the things that they highlighted. It's policy talk, but it's policy talk that's directly applicable to the base that this is targeted toward. The audience for this putting all those things together in one, like the idea of giving voting rights to murderers on death row, and like those sorts of things. The fact that she's on the record with these types of things means the people you need to be concerned about are not the shit libs. Like they're not a demographic worth pursuing. It's going to be the Paul Grahams of the world, like the normie Paul Grahams of the world, who are just kind of an ordinary person who sits down and they kind of evaluate the issues and they look at this one and they look at this one and they contemplate the consequences. And there's a few million people like that in the US who are genuinely undecided as of now. It's very difficult to believe, I know, but they exist. They are out there. They hold the most important votes. And this sort of ad is absolutely crushing. This ad would be absolutely crushing if it was an intra Democrat ad, like if it was a primary ad, Democratic primary ad. She is so profoundly unlikable that the only hope that she could possibly have is that right-wing people get super demoralized by her inevitability, her supposed inevitability, and they just roll over and die. Fuck that. Stop blackpilling. No blackpilling. On the flip side, we've got this. Republican gubernatorial candidate from Missouri, Bill Eigel, releases campaign ad with Mexican translator to inform illegals that he will deport them.
I'm Bill Eigel. I'm running for governor to crack down on illegal immigration.
Él es Bill Eigel y tomará medidas enérgicas contra la inmigración ilegal.
No more taxpayer handouts for illegals, period. Nada. Zilch. Zero.
No más ilegales, no más dinero, no más fiestas.
We're throwing them in jail and sending them back where they came from.
Ay, caramba.
Andre, arriba.
It's time to take Missouri back. I'm Bill Eigel. I'm running for...
How can you possibly blackpill? We've got a guy running for governor of Missouri. He pulls out a Mexican dude to translate for him as he tells the illegal immigrants, you guys are going back. A couple of years ago, this dude would have been nuked from orbit. This is a clear sign of the changing of the times. I don't know if he's going to win. Don't get bogged down in the micro. Observe the macro. Recognize the trend. You don't get something like this greenlit. The number of influences that this has to go through before it's actually released to the public. Unless there's genuine public demand for this. Even if that demand isn't overwhelming, there's genuine public demand for this. Javier Oliva says, Mr. Eigel will have to fight every construction, agriculture, and service industry lobby in Missouri. He will, yeah. This is not going to be I see a lot of people who are like, Trump's promising to deport 20 million people or whatever, but yeah, maybe he's only going to deport 2 million. Okay. So he only deports 2 million. That's vastly preferable to the alternative of importing 100 million more. This is the reality of the political system. This is the reality that we live in right now. I can't do anything about that. All we can do is just deal with the world that we have in front of us. And this is something that in that Bology interview, man, I wish, I don't know if I'm going to have time this afternoon. I don't know when I'm going to have time to do it, but I really want to just go through that. You guys have to hear the whole thing together because he's going to say a lot of stuff that you guys don't want to hear, but he brings up some very interesting points. And sometimes the autism is good. Like sometimes it's good to have the autist who just kind of dispassionately just evaluates the terrain, removes the ideological lenses from it, or to a large extent at least, and just kind of evaluates the terrain. Whether you agree or disagree with his prescriptions. This is like Yarvin. I don't agree with most of Yarvin's prescriptions, but he evaluates the terrain really, really well, and he will tell you the things you don't want to hear about your own side. The genuine problems that exist with propositions from your own side. Things that have to be considered and weighed. Like like going complete autarky. making everything made in the United States, there are massive, massive hurdles that have to be overcome to get something like that to happen. And you have to be realistic about it. You can't just throw up your knee-jerk response of, oh, fuck you, you traitor, or whatever. Like, you have to be realistic about these sorts of things because we live in a massive polity that has a whole bunch of people all tugging for power at the same time. And it's better to be someone who is aligned with the powerful people than to be someone who is pulling against them. Because pulling against them isn't going to get you anything except maybe people might say nice things about you after you die. But we have an opportunity for much higher things than that. Anyways, I'm going to see when I can sit and watch that whole thing with you guys and comment on it. So speaking of, I don't know, flyover Americans would be perhaps the pejorative. This is a couple of tweets that went viral a while back, and someone rebooted them. One of the group chats I'm in recently, and this is one of those like difficult truths that our guys often seem to not want to grapple with. So the Black Horse 65 on Twitter says, I really cannot imagine looking down on this woman. People like this are the salt of the earth and deserve an elite class willing to fight for their interests. So watch this video here. This is dinner in the trailer park as a 22-year-old mom of 4.
What's wrong, baby? What, baby?
Look, I leave it in my face and I missed. Pick it up.
Okay.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
Okay, watch out, baby. Okay. Don't touch. Don't touch. Don't touch.
Thank you.
Separate video, or sorry, a separate tweet on the same video from Kryptos. He says, the dissident right must understand that this is their base, their future. These are their people. If you dump on her for using seed oils, you are the problem. If you want to look down at her, you are the problem. This is what working class politics looks like. You must be as comfortable sitting at her table receiving her hospitality as you are in your study reading Schmidt, Burnham, and Ellul. Maybe more so. Her interests are your interests. This is your politics. And it's funny, he's got all these, I think all of these people, the reason you can't see them, some of them have deleted them, and some of them, like Indian Bronson, has since blocked him. Another who gets it, Black Horse. This guy says, much has been said about this TikTok today. Kryptos points toward the truth that's been seething in my mind for years, but it has not come to the complete end. I will try to come closer now, as it is my duty to speak as a voice from a world adjacent to that shown here. To begin, in America, I detect an unconscious surge from the spiritual abyss that is this world happening online. Indeed, it could only happen online, as this world, as quaint as it may seem to those born outside of it, and despite the nostalgia felt for it by those born in it, who praise this as a trad simple life, the eternal fact is that it is a world long benighted. Only the light bleeding through from the internet begins to light it up. Through the internet, some denizens of this place are beginning to become aware of the world of which they are not a part, i.e. the world of art and literacy beyond the crude arts of the earth belly that have sprung up like weeds from here. The people here are like captives born in chains and darkness, groping toward something they vaguely feel they've been denied. As a result of this, the surge of people from here groping toward a cultural voice are a force waiting to be commandeered by those who, as we know, control the voice of the mainstream. This behavioral sink has already begun. The way has been prepared by the degeneration of Christianity into a facile sham faith that is often, justly, no matter what Logo Daedalus says, mocked as the condition of prots. The theology becomes mere custom, and when customs are not cool, they erode, resulting in the typical immorality that this tweet captures. So, part of this is that she's an OnlyFans chick. She has an OnlyFans and has had at least one abortion, and she made like a shout your abortion thing or something like that. We must not think that this behavior is novel to the past 5 or 10 years. Any honest person who lives in and around these people will tell you the horror stories of rampant promiscuity and beyond. I grew up hearing whispers of pedophilic incest and even bestiality among the trailer trash. This woman merely adopts the popular forms of fornication, likely imported through urban culture, disseminated through platforms like the one she used to post this video. Perhaps now, since I have introduced the term, I must move to psychology. Is she indeed trailer trash? I cannot say for sure, and I'm not interested in talking about her personally. However, I believe I can talk about this woman as a type. I look at her face and feel I've spoken to dozens and seen thousands like her. I see the words "don't judge me" ready on her lip and the infuriating phrase "I hate drama," which is a complete lie. As you know, she was always the sort of person to gossip and make social life a fetid hell. I'm sure she thinks about fake people all the time and thousands of other tiresome cliches. Perhaps I'm wrong about this, but I doubt it. At least she loves her children. Or rather, she appears to do so from the performance of a middle-aged matronliness she puts on in this video. And it is a performance, whether it is affected or not. In short, she is typical of what one might call the people, who, to quote Bronze Age Mantis, Bronze Age Pervert, and possibly whoever he might have quoted, are the same everywhere. This tweet sums up the sentiment, spinning it in a more positive light. From experience, I reject the positivity. Most likely, she is motivated completely by the desires of her ego and id, to speak psychoanalytically, or of her belly, to use the older and more beautiful metaphor. In short, she is the sort of woman who could never understand the writer's Kryptos mentions in the tweet below. So, Schmidt, Burnham, and Allul. In fact, any discourse that exceeds her capacity is likely to make her insecure and belligerent, unless she is uncommonly humble, for which you can thank the ego-gratifying doctrine of equality that she, as both an American and one colonized by the left, holds dearer than her vague concept of God. In short, she is the sort of person whom sentimental people overestimate due to their admirable spirit of philanthropy and desire to regard all people as equal in the eyes of God. At the most zoomed-out level, she is a unit of the masses, having a tiny fragment of power that she could contribute to some political cause that can win her to its side. Her interests are legitimate, and those like her do not deserve to be in poverty and to live in poverty and shame, but fundamentally she must be saved from herself, as the tweet below understands. This person said, I don't hate these people, I just recognize most need to be saved from themselves. My problem is the people who get in the way. The dissident right must rise to the occasion of claiming the power of the eternal people for themselves. Make no mistake, this must be done, or the yokel trend from Caribbean Rhythms episode 78, of which she or her children will be a part, will continue to accelerate. Here we encounter a huge divide in the DR space, a fundamentally Christian divide that someday must be adequately addressed, the question of personal responsibility. The position I've been advocating here is more or less an unchristian one, aligning with this tweet, which says, treating the people as a politically conscious class feels incredibly left-wing. Looking for aristocratic virtue in the lower class feels incredibly left-wing. The right only works as an agent of civilization. An agent of the people will inevitably be degraded by the people. He says, that person, Spumoni, takes, and I more or less agree that this woman cannot take responsibility for herself. To speak crudely, she must be taken in hand and corrected by her betters, who are, of course, ourselves. Now, he's framing this as an anti-Christian or an unchristian position, and I disagree entirely. I think this is entirely a Christian position, that some people cannot take responsibility for themselves and must be taken responsibility for. You will always have the poor. True religion is caring for the widows and orphans. But I will leave aside irony here. Just know that I know how that statement sounds, smacking of the contempt of the left. This is why Christian love is non-negotiable, even if Christian, or at least Protestant, personal responsibility turns out not to be true. For my part, I believe that she has a degree of agency and a degree of helplessness. Christianity must provide for both of these, while those with more agency must do their duty toward her. Her offering is, of course, due humility resulting from personal honesty. But we must also provide for her children, and here things are strange. I will return to the beginning of this thread finally. Perhaps you've been saying, how exactly is the social class represented by this woman surging unconsciously forward in this country? Surely what you've said does not align with your description of her character. Your objection is fair. Here's what I've missed before now. The surge I describe is from the people of greater capacity born among the people, scions from the common tree who, through sufficient nutrition, have attained the biological material to ascend to a higher realm. These are truly essential to the DR, the sons and daughters of women like this who long for and can conceive some higher life that exists outside their blindness and spiritual night. The capacities of these gifted by God must be given opportunity to enter the world of power and art. Naturally, this last somewhat describes me, though I've been much luckier. Yet the mist of ignorance permeates me. I strive against it every day. I know there are many like me laboring alone to become who we should be. We are a power waiting to reveal itself. God be with us. Sage says maybe an unprotestant position. Yeah, I think this is a thing that I see often from people whose only awareness of Christianity is Protestantism. They see the connection between the liberal notion of blank slate equality, and they connect that to Christianity because that liberalism is descendant from denominations of Christianity, but those denominations were Protestant. This is the sense in which liberalism is really like a Protestant denomination. I don't mean this is a firing shots at my Protestant brothers in the chat, but this is simple. This is what led me to looking at the really, I would say, the denominations of Christianity that have the best claim to being apostolic. Catholicism and Orthodoxy. And I landed on Orthodoxy for reasons. You know, there's a reason that I'm Orthodox, but I've developed a much better appreciation for Roman Catholicism in the process compared to what I grew up with. And to consider these both Christian is difficult. It's so low resolution on such fundamental issues that I understand where people are coming from. Like, I understand, and I'm not here to have a Christian dick measuring contest. But the way this guy assumes that this notion, like it's like if you reject equality, if you reject absolute egalitarianism, you also have to reject Christianity, when actually egalitarianism is not Christian. It's a war against reality. Shut up. I don't want spam calls right now. This is what he's saying here is an explicitly historically Christian position. That the social betters are responsible for caring for the social lessers. And if you don't care for them, if you don't provide for them, the subversives will. And they will capitalize on whatever they have to offer, which individually they have very little to offer. But collectively, this becomes a massive voter base, a massive cultural base. Isak says she is dysgenic biotrash. See, this is the self-extinguishing impulse within the pagan right wing. I just reject it completely out of hand. It's self-defeating on a pragmatic basis. You don't even have to get into the moral question. On a pragmatic basis, it's self-extinguishing. This woman, while being individually responsible for her actions, is also a victim of demonic possession that has been imposed upon her by people who want to take advantage of her. We have a moral responsibility to look out for these people, to care for them, to provide for them. And it just so happens that when you actually fulfill that moral responsibility, it has profound political consequences as well. The reason these people have been scooped up by the left is because the right abandoned them. Because they're dysgenic biotrash. But the left scoops them up and now has a basis for executing all sorts of different political and economic schemes. If we are to have any sort of electoral future, it's going to have to include treating these people as human beings worthy of caring and providing for. And I would say beyond that we have a moral obligation to do that. It's not simply a pragmatic political position. It works pragmatically, politically, but we also have a moral responsibility to provide for those who cannot provide for themselves. This is the role of men. And it's when men stop doing this that the Longhouse was born. If you want to defeat the Longhouse, if you want to eliminate the Longhouse and no longer have to do with it, have anything to do with it, no longer have to deal with it, then you're going to have to begin providing for these people, caring for these people. And if you do that, you become a patron. You want to see patronage networks? Start building your own. As you begin building your own patronage network, eventually you'll get plugged into a higher patronage network. The collapse of patronage in the United States is not just something that we've suffered under. This woman is suffering under it herself. She deserves better than this, particularly because she's a woman. And it has nothing to do with the choices that she's made. She'll be held responsible for her own choices, as will those who abandoned her and left her with the shitty choices. They will be held responsible as well. All right, let's keep jamming. Catholic Orthodoxy on Twitter says, Matt, Apostolic Christianity used to take care of the degenerate biodiesel vat fuel by putting these people into monasteries and convents. Any ideas how to return to that or something similar? Well, yeah, there's lots of different things. I would say in this particular case, this woman doesn't need to be put into a convent. Maybe once upon a time she should have been, if that had been an opportunity that was available, that was availed to her. But she's a mother who's sitting here providing for her children, and as he says, if this is whether this is performative or not, there's something beautiful in that. Like, she's choosing, despite being a degenerate, she's choosing to model something beautiful, which is a mother, a young mother living in a trailer, making food for her children, and each one of her children says thank you when she gives it to them. In every single one of these instances, you could choose to focus on the demoralizing, shitty, degenerate, gross part of the story, or you can recognize and draw out the beautiful parts of it. A young, I don't know if she's single or not. Probably not. She probably would have said so if she was. Young mothers like this should not be put into a situation where they feel like they need to take political stances on things. If they are in that position, which her doing this is her taking a political stance. If they're in that position, that's a condemnation of men. That men have allowed women to get to the point where they feel obligated to make political statements. Our civilization collapsed because we allowed it to. Various different demographics became the vectors for that collapse. But the primary vector responsible for it, the vector that preceded all the others, was men. And I would go so far as to say white Christian men. And this is a white pill because it means as we begin taking responsibility for our civilization, or I'll say as we begin taking responsibility for our society, we will rebuild our civilization. The power is within our grasp. It's just a matter of us having the humility and the discipline to actually take it, to actually grab onto that power and submit ourselves to it. Catholic Orthodoxy says people with bad marriages often were encouraged to join convents as divorce was considered impossible in the Latin West. Bad or failed marriages, right? Like all of these institutions that fell apart, that lost their hold on society, did so because the people responsible for maintaining them stopped doing their job. And what we're experiencing now is God's judgment upon us. Here's a funny little thing. So the etymology of the word bad, from Middle English, perhaps from Old English, bedel, which means hermaphrodite or womanish man. So the word bad comes from a word that means hermaphrodite or womanish man. So Joel Davis says, turns out calling things gay because they're bad is literally an etymological repeat of how the word bad was invented in the first place. I I fucking love etymologies. So, if you thought, for whatever reason, that I might stop calling things gay, you were wrong. I'm going to call things gay even more. Wouldn't it be funny if, I don't know, a few hundred years hence, people don't call things bad anymore, they just call them gay? Linguistic warfare. Okay, we're gonna keep jamming on through here. I've got I got a couple of Trump videos now. This is kind of surreal. It's surreal enough that I had to go dig into it to see if it's actually real. And it is. This video is real.
And I want to thank you not only for being here, I want to thank you for running for president. Also, we've got a great show for you tonight. Donald Trump is here. Yeah. Everybody loves him. There's no other way to say it. Ladies and gentlemen, Donald Trump. Who got the money? Who got the money? Who got the money? Who got the money? You got the money. Haven't they? Yeah. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you. Speaking of doing a fantastic job, you are setting the world on fire right now.
Well, we're having a lot of fun, and I think we're hitting some pretty good issues, Stephen. And
I want to thank you not only for being here, I want to thank you for running for president. Because I'm not going to say this stuff writes itself.
New Hampshire and Iowa, no matter where we go, it seems that the response, it just gets better and better. And the polls have been phenomenal.
You see Zogby?
Zogby was great.
33%. That came out today, right? Zogby, 33%. Incredible. I'm not surprised at all. I'll tell you why. Is because...
I'm liking him a lot.
No, I'm not. I'm liking you too. I'm liking you too. I'm not surprised at all, because especially in the Republican field, because...
Have a country. We have to create, number one, we're going to build a wall. Number two, we're going to...
Okay.
Oh, listen to this, even with your crowd, I hear
No,
that.
they love
they love
the wall. No. People love the wall. Well, Donald Trump, thank you so much for being
Stephen.
here.
Good luck.
Donald Trump is the leader for the Republican nomination. We'll be right back. Thank you so much, Donald. Thank you so much. Donald Trump, everybody.
Isn't that just surreal? That was, like, I saw it and I was like, okay, it's super bad quality. It looks like maybe the audio and video aren't completely synced. This has got to be like some kind of AI fake. Like, there's no way this is actually real. And I found I think it was Washington Post or Wall Street Journal, one of them, that actually talked about it. It had the explanation of everything. It was a legit link that quoted from it. A number of these clips that you just saw, it quoted from them. This is like, this was less than 10 years ago, 9 years ago. Someone in the comments pointed out, they said, notice how Colbert, how like happy and lighthearted he seems compared to how just school marmy and negative and bitter and nasty he got. This was in the time when they'd all gotten the memo that we need to promote Trump. Hillary wanted to run against Trump. So all the people were hadn't been given their marching orders yet to hate him. And so they instinctively are just like, hey, yeah, Trump, woohoo, yeah, wall, woohoo. That's right, Trump. Thank you for running for president. Thank you for tarnishing the stupid rubes that are our enemies with your brand. Little did they know. Imagine telling someone sitting in the audience watching that, giving them a breakdown of how the next 10 years is going to go. Who Donald Trump was about to become. That you're seeing the earliest point of who is going to become one of the most famous Americans, one of the most a man of history, a man of destiny, that's going to define this entire age. Things can change fast, man. If you're trying to map a trajectory from now to 10 years from now, it's really hard. You can make kind of some broad guesses, which I've done. I've made some approximate broad guesses, but I fully recognize things can change so dramatically in so many different directions that completely over-indexing on any of them is folly. Yeah, Colbert was thanking Trump for being comedy fodder for him and his ilk. Little did they know. All right, so this one. I have to share this every time I come across it. Obama announcing the death of bin Laden versus Trump announcing the death of al-Baghdadi.
The United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden.
Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi is dead.
The United States launched a targeted operation against that compound.
They did a lot of shooting, and they did a lot of blasting, even not going through the front door. You know, you think you go through the door. If you're a normal person, you say, knock, knock, may I come in?
After a firefight, they killed Osama bin Laden and took custody of his body.
He died like a dog.
His death does not mark the end of our effort.
A beautiful dog. A talented dog.
We give thanks for the men who carried out this operation.
And I don't get any credit for this, but that's okay. I never do. But here we are.
May God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America.
And I'm writing a book. I wrote 12 books. All did very well.
The United States.
Oh, man. We live in good times. So, speaking of how quickly things can change, got a couple of threads here from Labrador Skeptic on Twitter. So, we're going to read this one here that he posted yesterday, where he talks about the post below is from the before times, the simpler and more naive political environment of 17 days ago. So 17 days before this. Whoops. So you have Joe Biden, July 5. Let me say this as clearly as I can. I am the sitting president of the United States. I am the nominee of the Democratic Party. I'm staying in the race. Balaji replies with Nixon says he won't resign, followed by Nixon resigns. So this was written July 6th. Labrador Skeptic. He says, it's now been 9 days since the debate, and as the open battle within the ruling coalition continues, we gain ever more information. And apparently, extra governmental alliance of the media and Democratic power brokers is trying to take down a sitting president while installing the new president of their choice, perhaps Kamala and perhaps not, with the American people not having any say in the matter. What the media is using is an unrelenting campaign of personal destruction, just as one-sided against Biden now as they were previously united in covering up the truth about Biden. They may get him, perhaps this weekend, but there is another possibility, and this would mean a seismic change in how the politics of this country work. The media has been united in a frothing frenzy of trying to destroy Trump for 8 years, and it hasn't worked. He's more popular than ever. They're united in trying to destroy Musk, and Musk still survives. In targeting both Biden and Trump for destruction at the same time, the media is doing something unprecedented. It is trying to overrule the voters on both sides of the political spectrum simultaneously, essentially declaring itself the kingmaker with no public accountability or input. He cited David Sachs saying, interesting horseshoe theory developing where both Trump supporters and Biden supporters want Biden to stay in the race. This raises some fascinating questions as we move to the next level of trying to determine what is happening within the fracturing ruling coalition. Who exactly are the media? Is it the people who work there? Is it the billionaires who own them? Is it the government three-letter agencies? Given the power of what the media is taking on, it would seem unlikely that it's just the talking heads and writers by themselves. If it's the billionaires and they lose, look out. Some very prominent and wealthy people are going to get crushed. If it is the government agencies, the true deep/administrative state, this seems very sloppy and uncoordinated. It would also mean this is the moment of true attempted governmental overthrow as the last vestiges of rule by the people are stamped out. If so, then this attempted overthrow is being incompetently executed by a coalition with no one really in charge, which would be par for the course given the buffoons who've been running the gay for decades. Can the media really bring down the nominees of the Republican and Democratic parties simultaneously? The sitting illegitimate president and the prior legitimate president? Who are these people? What is their power source? Will the Dem voters believe anything the media tells them? The last question is a fascinating one. Every time the press as a united pack does a 180-degree turn, they should lose credibility with a good portion of the U.S. population. They certainly have with the Republicans in the center. Will they lose more of the left? While taking on Trump and Biden simultaneously is huge, the media has made another very powerful enemy who is betting everything he has on taking them down. Elon is now effectively talking about executing people if need be. And Elon says the SAVE Act, so Speaker Johnson said the SAVE Act will safeguard our elections by ensuring only American citizens vote in federal elections. And Elon says those who oppose this are traitors. All caps, traitors. What is the penalty for traitors again? Billionaires Fed posting is one of my favorite things. So that was the original post. So now we have the post from yesterday. The post below is from the before times, the simpler and more naive political environment of 17 days ago. The world has changed, and we need to focus on 3 dates in particular: June 26, July 13, and July 17. As of June 26, American politics still appeared normal on the surface. Biden had won the Democratic primaries, Trump had won the Republican primaries, and they were getting ready to do electoral battle as the representatives of their parties, as had been happening for centuries. They were the two most powerful men in America, and the winner of their contest under the Constitution would preside over the federal government with absolute control over the executive branch. Then the debate happened on June 27th, and the world changed. An unelected coalition of the media and Dem power brokers decided to effectively remove the president from power, even though they had no legal or constitutional power to do so. Oh, there were legal and constitutional methods for removing Biden, but they chose secret paths of power that were extra-constitutional instead. As noted in my July 6th thread, this was an unprecedented moment in U.S. history. The media and those behind the media were simultaneously trying to destroy both the Republican and Democratic nominees for the presidency. We'd never seen anything like this before. It was already entirely outside the constitutional process for how presidents came to power. A tremendous acceleration then occurred on July 13 when Trump came extraordinarily close to having his head blown off. The only possible explanations were extraordinary incompetence on the part of the Secret Service or malicious intent. The view of the Secret Service changed that day, and as more information continues to emerge, it is becoming increasingly difficult to buy into the extraordinary incompetence theory. The attempt to remove the Republican nominee from the playing board failed by the thinnest of margins, and then 4 days later, the Democratic nominee disappeared from the playing board. As I write this, Joe Biden has not been seen in public since July 17, 6 days ago. The last several days have been some of the most bizarre in American political history. A presidential nominee supposedly resigns and anoints a successor via a letter posted to an unofficial social media account with a signature that doesn't match. Wheels are in motion, and bam, the party changes their nominee for someone who never received a primary vote for president, even while the sitting president remains hidden. This is deeply bizarre stuff. On June 26th, the election looked normal. Less than 4 weeks later, there was an attempted double changeout, the removal of both main party nominees, and whoever was doing this, it was entirely extra-constitutional and without the permission of the American public. The curtain has been pulled back for the United States and the world, and it is quite plain that the U.S. is ruled not by the voters, not by the politicians, but by a ruling coalition of the unelected. Some may be impressed by the open display of raw power, but I see something else altogether: desperation. A fracturing ruling coalition is moving fast and hard, and in the process, they are burning through their primary source of power: legitimacy. There is an acceleration that has been occurring over the last 4 weeks, and it has been an acceleration of delegitimization, both domestically and internationally. That's enough for now, but there is no walking back the delegitimization at this point. The world has changed. So, I'll say, with the context of this thread, go listen to I'll pull it up here again because we've had quite a few people join us since then. Go listen to this conversation between Tom Luongo and TFTC. This is the... let me pull it up here for you guys real quick. And they talk a lot about this, and I really trust Tom's insights, and I think he's bang on with basically everything he's saying in this. So this is on TFTC. exposing who was really behind Trump's assassination, Tom Luongo.
You took your shot at the king and you missed. And now you don't even have plausible deniability that you didn't do it. We know you did it. We can see you did it. We can see that you know that we can see you did it. It's over. So now is when they get really dangerous, sadly, because now they got nothing left to lose.
So I'll drop the link for this in the chat here so you guys can go watch this when you are ready. There it is. So next thread is by this guy, Aiden. Kind of an interesting character, but he did a great thread on the CrowdStrike phenomenon, which is also something that they discuss in that Tom Luongo interview. He says the global IT outage you witnessed was not an accident. Important. The purpose of this thread is to explain non-IT and to non-information cybersecurity professionals why I believe the outage you are seeing around the world due to the update from CrowdStrike is not an accident. Drunk Plato says that was Marty Bent's show from Tales from the Crypt at a great Bitcoin podcast. Yeah, I've never encountered him before. I haven't spent a lot of time in the Bitcoin circles, but I'm sure you Bitcoin guys are well aware of him. So it says, before we begin, introduction. Hi, everyone. My name is Aiden Biber. I'm known as the person behind hashtag Pfizer leak, and most of my writing here on X/Twitter has been on pharma-related topics. However, my professional work has been information security and cybersecurity. My credentials include Head of Information Security in Metro Bank, UK, Merck MSD Information Security Office for Europe, Middle East, and Africa, and consultant to insurance and financial institutes. The opinion you're about to read is based on years of experience. Now, when I see this background, I don't know this guy. I don't know where he's coming from, but he's coming from a circle of people who I'm not necessarily just going to take everything they say at face value, if you know what I mean. But we'll continue with the thread. He says, let's start with what we have. Huge numbers of systems around the world has crashed because of a deployment of an update to a software that was installed on them that came from a company called CrowdStrike, making them display the infamous blue screen of death. How can a software kill your computer? Simple. Most software run in a restrictive mode, meaning the system allows them to run in an environment on your computer and is restricting its access to the real resources of the computer. There are, however, some exceptions. Drivers are a type of software that run in a highly unrestricted mode. It needs to, because drivers, or example for your screen display, needs to have access to the hardware to operate correctly. It reads like he's not English as a first language person. Anti-malware/antivirus/anti-spyware also run in such a way. Why? Because they need to inspect other software on your computer, and thus they run in what is known as privilege mode. If a code that runs in privilege mode is not written correctly, it can crash your computer. Since the threats that a modern computer, which is connected to the internet, is constantly evolving, modern anti-malware/antivirus/anti-spyware manufacturers need to develop a mechanism that allows them to develop, test, and distribute such code, which brings us to DevOps. Duffhead says, I think he's Belgian. Okay. DevOps is a set of practices, tools, and cultural philosophies that aim to automate and integrate the processes of software development, dev, and IT operations, ops. Its primary goal is to shorten the system's development lifecycle and provide continuous delivery with high quality. In traditional software development methods, any update which is being released must be tested by a QA team, quality assurance. And then after the QA team submit the results, they're being reviewed by change management committee who decide whether to deploy the update. DevOps is an attempt to industrialize and automate the process using technology so that rapid changes can be developed and installed, and a whole set of platforms have been developed over the years to allow such thing to occur, which brings us to SecOps. All software can lead to unwanted results, to issues related to confidentiality, integrity, availability, or authenticity of information. Thus, the role of security is to manage these risks. In parallel to the development of DevOps, a new approach to security was formed. SecOps, or security operations, is a discipline within information security that focuses on maintaining and improving the security posture of an organization through continuous monitoring, proactive threat hunting, incident response, and security infrastructure management. DevOps aims to streamline and accelerate the software development lifecycle, the SDLC, by fostering development, dev, and operations, ops, teams collaboration. SecOps aims to integrate security practices into IT operations, ensuring security is maintained throughout the IT lifecycle. Back to CrowdStrike. Let's focus on a cybersecurity company who has a product that protects computers. How does security look like in a modern software company? Multiple technologies are being used to automate what in the past took a lot of time and effort. Let's say a new threat has been discovered. A script was identified as having the capacity, if run on someone's computer, to give administrative rights to download and install from the internet a malicious code that will allow an attacker to gain control over your computer. If your company is in the business of protecting systems, you want to make sure that the computers which use your code to protect their assets will not be vulnerable to that threat. How would you do it in a way that would be efficient? You write a code that identifies the script. In a DevOps/SecOps environment, you submit that update or change, and it passes an automated process that checks for the quality of the change. What does that mean? The automated process takes your code and runs it to validate it works correctly. How do you check such code? You run the update on multiple systems, and based on the results, you decide if it works or not. In other words, you run your update versus a lot of systems which have your software deployed on it, and you test your code does not break the system. Obviously, you will check for more things, but this is the most basic thing you do, especially when your code is running as a driver on a computer system. After your code is tested, you add another layer of protection by performing something called singing your code or change. I don't know if that's supposed to be singing, singeing. Help me out here, nerds in the chat. Oh, signing your code. What is signing? Signing is a part of cryptography, which is the practice and study of techniques for securing communication and information from adversaries. A digital signature provides authenticity the same way your handwritten signature is used as a proof of your authenticity. Since you do not want your software update mechanism to be hijacked by adversaries or threat agents, you use something called digital signature to make sure it will only update a code that was signed by your company, and you protect the method of signing. This is how every modern company in the world who develops code, especially in the domain of security, acts, or would act maybe. In most cases, this is an automated process that takes place after the results of the quality assurance process were successful, which brings us back to CrowdStrike. There is no way on earth that this update from CrowdStrike has passed quality assurance tests, and there is no way on earth such a bad code that must have crashed so many systems in QA phase would have been signed unless someone wanted to kill a lot of systems and do it fast. Why would anyone want to cause such outbreak of so many computer systems? Because when a computer system crashes, it can lead to loss of data. Who will want data or information to be lost? People who want to hide things they did. Who would want to hide things they did? Criminals. Can you think of any criminal activity that took place in the last week which was so big that could have altered the faith of the world? I'm sure you can. So if you were behind this criminal activity and needed to erase evidence, what could you do? The answer is above. To summarize.
Something?
No. Yes.
Well?
Well, I mean, you're a man of the world, aren't you? I mean, you know, you've been around, you've been there.
What do you mean?
So he says possible objectives of the threat agent. 1, cause system crash that leads to systems restoration from a state before the attempt on Donald Trump. 2, you must enter safe mode in order to delete the faulty update, and safe mode data and logging records could be manipulated and erased. To those who ask what would they achieve by crashing the systems and how can they delete the evidence, here's a plausible explanation. CrowdStrike was established in 2011. Over the years, I've attended many talks with people who work in the company and are considered to be subject matter experts in their field of cybersecurity. The notion that this company fucked up by mistake is simply an insult. No way. If threat agents conspired to kill a U.S. president and just a few days later another non-imaginable security event occurs, since digital data represents a large part of the data generated in the world, don't you find it highly plausible that these two are related? We leave digital traces everywhere, and since the picture that came from the crime scene does not make sense, we must take into account that the most plausible action these threat actors would take is to make these traces disappear. This is the reality we live in right now. My purpose of writing this thread is to help people grasp the reality we live in. All technologies are a double-edged sword. It can bring good into our lives, and if used against us, can drag us into a pit of endless despair. It's all up to us. Says, I'm not into conspiracies, I'm into confidences. When two events which are considered highly unlikely take place one after another, I find great interest in this confidence. I think he probably means coincidence. I'm not sure. As I find great interest in evaluating what is the possibility it was not a coincidence. Here, high. So given CrowdStrike's background, I think it's undeniable that it wasn't a coincidence that this happened when it did. All right. Now let's take a sharp turn into completely different territory altogether. First of all, I put this video in my bookmarks a little while ago. And ever since the weird, or not the weird, but the whole thing that happened with the sun a while back, where the northern lights had come all the way down. Here's another thing for you.
Hey everybody, I just made a video of the sun kind of flashing. I want you guys to watch this. Now I'm going to use my welding shield. And we're going to watch the sun. Now let's count in between those flashes. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's consistent. Every 4 seconds. Why is the sun flashing like this? Is this even our sun? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you know what I mean? It's consistent. Like and share. Get this out. What is this thing? Is this even our sun? And yes, off to the right hand side there, that's all sun or flares or whatever. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2.
Catholic Orthodoxy, if you're still watching, I'd be curious for your take on this.
3, 4. What is going on? I noticed before the eclipse, I was on a phone call with my buddy and I was like, you notice anything different with the sunlight? It just seemed a little different. And even today, it's a beautiful sunny day. And surprisingly, not a chemtrail in sight. Which is a good...
Esox says, the energies are rising. Look what happened in Yellowstone yesterday. From what I understand, that's a relatively common occurrence. It's not anything to be alarmed about. I did think it was funny that as all of this other stuff is happening, all of a sudden we get this news, this report coming out of, stuff's happening with Yellowstone, because of course it is. There's certain things that I don't want to see memed into reality. Catholic Orthodoxy says, don't know if it's related, but I know the heartbeat of the sun that we see in coronal holes is about 3 seconds. Interesting. There's definitely weird shit going on, and this ties back into the dark technology. The thing I mentioned yesterday with Ashton Forbes and the Malaysian flight. There's funky shit happening, man. They're like openly manipulating the weather now. This has just been mainstreamed, normalized. Oh yeah, chemtrails. Yeah, that's a thing. We've been doing that. And I've been following a couple of different accounts that, like, you have to expose yourself to these, the conspiracy Canadian on TikTok. Grump says the truth is out there. You have to expose yourself to these people because the schizo people, the people that are willing to that see a conspiracy and everything, they do have a hit rate. Their hit rate's not always great, but they do have a hit rate. So you have to be able to like filter through the silliness and then kind of pick out the stuff that they're actually seeing, because most people aren't actually willing to look at it. Most people would just kind of write this stuff off and they're like, whatever. But I don't know, the schizo people, the astrology crew, the Q people, it's becoming clearer and clearer that a lot of these people are onto something. I don't know what it is, but there's something that's happening there. So relatedly here, kind of tangentially, this is another one that I've had in the bookmarks about some kind of interesting schizo sort of stuff. The body electric. That's exactly what a Fed would say about Yellowstone. So he said, some things I've learned from reading Robert O. Becker's book, The Body Electric. Here are some gems for you. This is the book. Electromagnetism and the Foundation of Life. Bone is the only aspect of the body that truly regenerates rather than heals. There's a massive difference between the two processes from a biophysics standpoint. Everything's getting really slow all of a sudden. Why can I not just open an image? Okay. Dr. Marshall Urist, one of the great researchers in orthopedics, was to conclude in the early 1960s that this second type of bone healing is an evolutionary throwback, the only kind of regeneration that humans share with all other vertebrates. Regeneration in this sense means the regrowth of a complex body part consisting of several different kinds of cells in a fashion resembling the original growth of the same part in the embryo, in which the necessary cells differentiate from simpler cells or even from seemingly unrelated types. This process, which I'll call true regeneration, must be distinguished from two other forms of healing. One, sometimes considered a variety of regeneration, is physiological repair, in which small wounds and everyday wear within a single tissue are made good by nearby cells of the same type, which merely proliferate to close the gap. The other kind of healing occurs when a wound is too big for single tissue repair, but the animal lacks the true regenerative competence to restore the damaged part. In this case, the injury is simply patched over as well as possible with collagen fibers, forming a scar. Since true regeneration is most closely related to embryonic development and is generally strongest in simple animals, it may be considered the most fundamental mode of healing. So there's a, I like this style of art. Okay, then we got another schizo thing after this as well, and then we're going to talk about some the game stonks and Gundo. Simple animals can regenerate more fully than complex ones, or in modern times, the ability to regenerate declines as one moves up the evolutionary scale. Salamanders are the perfect example for their astonishing regenerative potential, regenerating eyes, the jaw, limbs, so forth. DC energy performs in the background of all biological systems except for the regenerative, especially for regenerative roles. A change in the current has a direct relationship with the ability to repair. As positive current increases, metabolic rate of cells rises, which infers benefit. And I think this is supposed to be either implies or confers. Says, I soon made two discoveries. The Russians were willing to follow hunches. Their researchers got government money to try the most outlandish experiments, ones that our science just knew couldn't work. Furthermore, Soviet journals published them, even if they did work. I particularly enjoyed Biophysics, the Soviet Journal of Biophysics, and it was there I encountered a paper on the nature of the variation of the bioelectric potentials in the regeneration process of plants by A.M. Sinyukin of Lomonosov State University in Moscow. Sinyukin began by cutting one branch from each of a series of tomato plants. Then he took electrical measurements around the wound as each plant healed and sent out a new shoot near the cut. He found a negative current, a stream of electrons, flowing from the wound for the first few days. A similar current of injury is emitted from all wounds in animals. During the second week, after a callus had formed over the wound and the new branch had begun to form, the current became stronger and reversed its polarity to positive. The important point wasn't the polarity. The position of the measuring electrode with respect to a reference electrode often determines whether a current registers as positive or negative. Rather, Sinyukin's work was significant because he found a change in the current that seemed related to reparative growth. Sinyukin found a direct correlation between these orderly electrical events and biochemical changes. As the positive current increased, cells in the area more than doubled their metabolic rate, also becoming more acidic and producing more vitamin C than before. Sinyukin then applied extra current using small batteries to a group of newly lopped plants, augmenting the regeneration current. These battery-assisted plants restored their branches up to 3 times faster than the control plants. The currents were very small, only 2 to 3 microamperes for 5 days. An ampere is a standard unit of electrical current, and a microampere is 1/millionth of an ampere. Larger amounts of electricity killed the cells and had no growth-enhancing effect. Moreover, the polarity had to match that normally found in the plant. So another cool depiction of this. Is this a, let's see, semiconductal bone? I can't quite read that up there. Hydroxyapatite crystals. Interesting stuff. The human body works on the basis of electromagnetism at the quantum level. The body is conductive in nature. The system works with sunlight and charge to produce unfathomably complex processes involving subatomic particles like electrons and protons. We found that bone was an LED. Like many such materials, it required an outside source of light before an electric current would make it release its own light. And the light it emitted was at an infrared frequency invisible to us, but the effect was consistent and undeniable. In the mid-1960s, solid-state devices were only beginning to hit the market, and one of the PN junction's most interesting properties hadn't yet been exploited. When you run a current through it in forward bias, some of its energy gets turned into light and emitted from the surface. In other words, electricity makes it glow. Nowadays, various kinds of these PN junctions, called light-emitting diodes or LEDs, are everywhere as digital readouts in watches and calculators. But then they were laboratory curios. So young children's fingers clearly sheared off beyond this level will regenerate perfectly. So limb regeneration in children. It says Illingworth began treating other children with such neglect, and by 1974 she documented several hundred regrown fingertips, all in children 7 years old or younger. Other clinical studies have since confirmed that young children's fingers cleanly sheared off beyond the outermost crease of the outermost joint will invariably regrow perfectly in about 3 months. This crease seems to be a sharp dividing line with no intermediate zone between perfect restoration and none at all. Piezoelectricity is fundamental to the operation of biological systems. Piezoelectricity is the electric charge that builds up in certain materials when they're squeezed or stretched. These materials can also change shape when an electrical charge is applied to them. There's an experiment that I was watching a TED Talk about recently where they took so there's this phenomenon that's been observed with earthquakes, that just before an earthquake happens in a given area, you can see a huge flow of electrons up to the surface in that area. The example that the guy gave was there was an earthquake in a valley in northern Italy, and they had like monitors monitoring the tops of the mountains just before, for the week or two before that, and essentially the mountain peaks lit up like a Christmas tree. They were like glowing red, and then there was a huge earthquake. And so he's proposed this as you can identify when an earthquake is going to happen by watching this flow of electrons coming up out of the Earth's surface. And you can also capitalize on, you can access that electron flow. And one of the ways that they experimented with this is they took a gigantic granite pillar. They took this granite pillar, they laid it down on its side. So if you imagine like a granite pillar that's laying down flat like this, and then they take a press and they press it down, compressing the pillar from the, if it's 10 feet tall and it's a foot by a foot square, then they're compressing down on the foot wide part. And they had electrodes on the ends of it. And as soon as they began to apply the pressure, you got an electron flow running out of this granite. This is we were talking about Tesla a little bit ago. This is getting into Tesla stuff. Randall Carlson as well. We already know that the brain, heart, eyes, nerves, muscles, and ears work on electrical impulses. So the creation of man-made NN-EMFs has consequences on these systems that were finely attuned for nature's EMFs. And this is from the endocrine, metabolic, and cardiovascular systems. Living things interpret electromagnetic energy for information about time and place. So they must have a means to filter out useless signals, although perhaps not those never before encountered. Many studies have found that the bioeffects of artificial energy stabilize after a few weeks, suggesting that animals adapt so as to live normally in a changed environment. Hence, there's a large body of work that's often quoted to prove that electropollution isn't dangerous. As already noted, this simplistic viewpoint doesn't take into account the additive effects of stress. Moreover, when a stress is too strong or too persistent, compensation fails, and the effects become obvious and sometimes irreversible. When evaluating research on hazards, therefore, we must always ask whether the experiment was continued long enough to be informative. Otherwise, a short-term study showing harm is likely to be truer than a reassuring one of medium length. The primary effect of electromagnetic energy on the endocrine system appears to be the stress responses already described. The major confirmatory study in humans comes from the Soviet Union, where detailed medical tests of 72 technicians exposed daily to 1,000 microwatts or less disclosed ominous changes in white and red blood cell counts and an across-the-board decline in immune response. The workers in a group of controls were studied for 3 years. No human study approaching this in length or completeness has ever been done in the West. This is another one of those things where the schizos are being vindicated. The schizos talking about the 5G towers and Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and the negative effects of all these things. There's something to it. This says, Electromagnetic energy has other adverse effects on blood composition and tissue function. Yuri D. Dumansky, one of many Soviet biophysicists who have done detailed work on microwave hazards, found changes in carbohydrate metabolism, including a rise in human blood sugar levels, resulting from 100 and 1,000 microwatts. Power frequency, 50 hertz fields, were also linked to altered sugar and protein metabolism in rats, as well as decreased muscular strength in rabbits. Like many other Russian results, these were questioned because of American failure to corroborate them. In this case, a research team headed by N.S. Mathewson of the Armed Forces Radiobiology Research Institute in Bethesda, Maryland, reported no such metabolic changes in response to the sanguine seafarer 45 hertz frequency. However, the Mathewson group made a fundamental mistake. They neglected to account for the 60 hertz background field near the rest cages in their lab, even though they'd measured it when setting up the workstation. When we reanalyzed their data in light of this omission, the experiment showed exactly the same changes in blood levels of glucose, globulins, lipids, and triglycerides as the Russians had found. In the same way that having light controls during a scientific research is key for an accurate result, EMF controls are crucial as well. The Soviets understood this point, while the Americans didn't at the time. The CIA and other three-letter agencies have known about this work for a long time. They funded research on electromagnetic mind control at least as early as 1960, most notably with MKUltra. You'd be a fool for believing this was lost history. It was intentionally buried by the power and money hungry. It says the Central Intelligence Agency funded research on electromagnetic mind control at least as early as 1960, when the notorious MKUltra program, mostly concerned with hypnosis and psychedelic drugs, included money for adapting bioelectric sensing methods, at that time primarily the EEG, to surveillance and interrogation, as well as for finding, quote, techniques of activation of the human organism by remote electronic means. In testimony before the Senate Subcommittee on Health and Scientific Research on September 21, 1977, MKUltra Director Dr. Sidney Gottlieb recalled there was a running interest in what effects people standing in the field of radio energy have, and it could easily have been that somewhere in the many projects someone was trying, blah, 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 blah. A possible explanation as to why space osteoporosis is a massive problem. It says space osteoporosis may result from unnatural currents induced in bone by a spacecraft's rapid motion through the Earth's magnetic field, with a polarity reversal every half orbit, or it may be a direct effect of the field reversal. This abnormality, which may change the activity of bone cells directly, would be superimposed on abnormal responses of bone's natural electrical system, which is almost certainly affected by weightlessness. The unfamiliar external field reversals could also weaken the copper pegs at the same time that the bones are in a constant state of rebound from their earthly weight-induced potentials, producing a signal that says, no weight, no bones needed. We know that the more even distribution of blood caused by weightlessness registers in the heart as an excess. As a result, fluid and ions, including calcium, are withdrawn from the blood. I've just got a few more here. Using electromagnetism to kill bacteria, along with some nuance on silver. In preliminary tests, we found that silver electrodes, when made electrically positive, would kill all types of bacteria in a zone about a half-inch in diameter, apparently because of positive silver ions driven into the culture by the applied voltage. This was an exciting discovery because no single antibiotic worked against all types of bacteria. I thought that if I inserted the silver wire into Jim's nonunion and the area became infected, I could, as a last resort, make the electrode positive and perhaps save the leg a while longer. Of course, the positive current could well delay healing further or actually destroy more bone. Of course, the germ-killing action of silver had been known for some time. At the turn of the century, silver foil was considered the best infection preventative dressing for wounds. Writing in 1913, the eminent surgeon William Stewart Halstead referred to the centuries-old practice of putting silver wire in wounds, then said of the foil, quote, I know of nothing which could quite take its place, nor have I known anyone to abandon it who had thoroughly familiarized himself with the technique of its employment. With the advent of better infection-fighting drugs, silver fell out of favor because its ions bind avidly to proteins and thus don't penetrate tissue beyond the very surface. A few silver compounds still have specialized uses in some eye, nose, and throat infections, and the Soviets used silver ions to sterilize recycled water aboard their space stations. But for the most part, medicine has abandoned the metal. Electrified silver offers several advantages over previous forms, however. There are no ions besides silver to burden the tissues. The current injects or drives the silver ions further than simple diffusion can. Moreover, it's especially well suited for use against several kinds of bacteria simultaneously. It kills even antibiotic-resistant strains and also works on fungus infections. There's a practice among many people to store water in copper or silver vessels. And it seems that the people have done experiments with this where they take water and they look at it under a microscope when it's just like straight out of the tap. And then they put it into a copper vessel, leave it there for a little bit, and then look at the water again. And you can see the molecules have structured themselves. They go from being just kind of scattered and disparate and loose and chaotic to having like crystalline form. They look like snowflakes, kind of. Exploring the potential of this work for joint cartilage regeneration. The potential of regenerating the brain. It might seem foolish to expect any regeneration in the most complex of all biological structures, the brain. Yet salamanders, some fish, and most frogs in the tadpole stage can replace large parts of it, including the optic lobes and the olfactory lobes or forebrain, the part from which our prized cerebral hemispheres developed in the course of evolution. Replacement depends on ingrowth of remaining sensory nerves, the olfactory nerves in the case of the forebrain, and the optic nerves for the optic lobes. When these nerves grow back into the area where brain has been destroyed, they stimulate the ependymal cells in the brain ventricles, which proliferate outward into the damaged part and then differentiate into new neurons and glial cells. If the animal's nose or eyes are removed so that the injury zone receives no nerve input, no regeneration occurs. Thus, brain regrowth begins much like that of limbs, with the connection of nerve fibers to an epithelial cell tissue. The ependyma, remember, is embryologically a close relative of the epidermis, and in fact can be considered the central nervous system's inner skin. Since the electrical environment produced by the neuroepidermal junction is what stimulates cells to de-differentiate and divide in the salamander limb stump, and since we started limb regeneration in the rat by crudely mimicking this signal, it seems likely that a similar stratagem could induce brain regeneration in animals normally lacking this ability. Cancer's interesting relationship with regenerative capacity. Those animals that regenerate best are least susceptible to cancer. In general, as complexity increases up the evolutionary ladder from worms to humans, regeneration decreases and cancer becomes more common. A great explanation as to why the Russian view of biology has always been leaps and bounds ahead of the West's view on it. Classic case of reductionism versus holism. With delicate lab culture methods, we can remove from an animal certain organs and tissues such as bone, a heart, a pancreas, a brain, or groups of nerve cells, keeping them alive for days or weeks. Much of modern biology in the West is based on the behavior of such isolated systems, which is assumed to be the same as in the living body. Russian biology, based on Ivan Pavlov's concept of the body as an indivisible unit, has always been skeptical of tissue culture results, considering these parabiotic reactions only hints toward definitive studies of the entire animal. The good sense of this view is shown by the fact that life tolerates fragmentation very poorly. Except in the simplest species, removal of anything more than a few cells always destroys the organization and hence the organism. Even if we could culture separately all the organs and tissues and then put them together like Dr. Frankenstein's monster, we would still, at our present level of knowledge, have only a collection of different kinds of meat, not a living entity. As Albert Szent-Györgyi once wrote, biology is the science of the improbable, and seldom can we predict new discoveries from what we already understand. These limitations were clearly recognized by American medicine in the 1940s, but they seem to have been gradually forgotten. Today, most MDs tacitly assume that once a few blank spots are filled in, the established basic sciences will be all we'll ever need to take care of the sick. As a result, they're losing the forest among the trees. And isn't it interesting that you're seeing the same this is like a characteristic of this liberal, rationalist, materialist spirit that you recognize this happening in philosophy. You've got like the blank slateism, the reductionism, but it's also happening in biology as well. This is like a consistent trait of the Western rationalist, materialist emphasis that's dominated the West for a while, completely over-indexing on the material, the reductionist, the rationalist, the Western people are not comfortable holding two potentially conflicting ideas at the same time. It's either or instead of both and. Sometimes it is both and. You have to be able to hold two conflicting ideas. There are paradoxes. And the human being, the specific individual human body, and the collective human body both have this paradox within them where they are simultaneously one thing and many things. You are one body made up of trillions of little bodies. And you're not one or the other. You're both of them. In the same way, you are both your individual self, and you are also a subset of a large group, which is its own one. The one and the many both exist simultaneously. You can't over-index on one or the other. On the electromagnetic nature of the Earth. Since then, we've learned of many other cyclic changes in the energy structure around us. The Earth's electromagnetic field is largely a result of interaction between the magnetic field per se, emanating from the planet's molten iron-nickel core and the charged gas of the ionosphere. It varies with the lunar day and month, and there's also a yearly change as we revolve around the sun. A cycle of several centuries is driven from somewhere in the galactic center. The Earth's surface and the ionosphere form an electrodynamic resonating cavity that produces micropulsations in the magnetic field at extremely low frequencies, from about 25 per second down to 1 every 10 seconds. Most of the micropulsation energy is concentrated at about 10 hertz, or cycles per second. Solar flares spew charged particles into the Earth's field, causing magnetic storms. The particles join those already in the outer reaches of the field, the Van Allen belts, which protect us by absorbing these and other high-energy cosmic rays. Every flash of lightning releases a burst of radio energy at kilocycle frequencies, which travels parallel to the magnetic field's lines of force and bounces back and forth between the north and south poles many times before fading out. The surface and ionosphere act as the charge plates of a condenser, a charge storage device, producing an electrostatic field of hundreds or thousands of volts per foot. This electric field continually ionizes many of the molecules of the air's gases, and it too pulses in the ELF, or extremely low frequency range. There are also large direct currents continually flowing within the ionosphere, and as telluric within the Earth currents, generating their own subsidiary electromagnetic fields. In the 1970s, we learned that the sun's magnetic field is divided from pole to pole into sectors like the sections of an orange, and the field in each sector is oriented in the direction opposite to adjacent sectors. About every 8 days, the sun's rotation brings a new region of the interplanetary or solar magnetic field opposite us, and the Earth's field is slightly changed in response to the flip, and it cuts off there. Okay, so past the 2-hour mark here, I want to see if there was... Oh, yeah, this one. The influence of magnetic fields on the pineal gland and its function. The relationship has been conclusively proven by recent studies of the pineal gland. This tiny organ in the center of the cranium has turned out to be more than a vaguely defined third eye of the mystics. It produces melatonin and serotonin, 2 neurohormones that, among many other functions, directly control all of the biocycles. The lamprey, akin to the ancestor of all vertebrates as well as certain lizards, has an actual third eye close to the head surface and directly responsive to light, instead of the blind pineal found in other vertebrates. The eminent British anatomist, J.Z. Young has recently shown that this organ controls the daily rhythm of skin color changes that these animals undergo. For our story, the most important point is that very small magnetic fields influence the pineal gland. Several research groups have shown that applying a magnetic field of half a Gauss or less, oriented so as to add to or subtract from the Earth's normal field, will increase or decrease production of pineal melatonin and serotonin. Other groups have observed physical changes in the gland cells in response to such fields. The experiments were controlled for illumination, since it has been known for several years that shining a light on the head somehow modifies the gland's hormone output, even though it's buried so deeply within the head in most vertebrates that, as far as we know, it can't react directly to the light. Biological semiconductors as a possible explanation for aura and high voltage Kirlian photography. How humanity has changed our electromagnetic environment compared to what we evolved for. Chronic background stress from a man-made electromagnetic environment, and so on. So I'm going to drop this thread. For those of you who want to read through the rest of it, I'll drop the thread actually of right where I cut off. And you can go read it for yourself. My big takeaway from this is the forefront of the electromagnetic study of electromagnetism and electric universe and the ether. This is like the forefront of physics right now. And we just found out recently, I think it was kind of already known, but we got it confirmed by, I heard Mark Andreessen talking about it, and I can't remember if he was citing someone else, but they had people within the government tell them, in the context of talking about AI, they were like, well, we're doing math. Like, you can't outlaw doing math. And they're like, of course we can. We've outlawed certain aspects of physics. If you look at the most recent video that Ashton Forbes has posted on his YouTube, he has a theory about what it is that they actually outlawed. Or not outlawed, but rather classified. So yeah, this is an area that warrants much further study. And I think when I talk about how weird stuff is going to start coming out, and it already is, like, this is the domain that I'm talking about. So we'll keep an eye on that. I've got a couple more things that I want to get through here. I wonder if we're past 2 hours. What time is it? 1:41. I've got 2 articles on Gundo that I want to read you guys. And then I've got a video here about some crazy ancient technology. I think I've mentioned it on here before. But let's see. I think I might have to just boot out the Game Stonks one for today. And I'll do that on a future episode. Because we're still going to go for a little bit. And this is a little too much. All right. Ethical skeptic. Witt says electromagnetism is the unified field theory. Gravity is fake and gay. Hell yeah. Straight Buster says there's literal magic out there and they don't want you to know about it. Yes. Yes, there is. This Ashton Forbes thing that we're gonna watch on Friday for the Schizo stream in the King Pill Discord. We're gonna be watching something that makes the case for like teleportation is real. I'll put it that way. This is the Schizo stuff. Teleportation is real. It's real. And there's strong evidence that the the deep state, deep military areas of study, whatever you want to call it, the breakaway civilization, they've known about this for a long time because it's pretty straightforward, actually. Anyways, if you want to join for that, then kingpill.com. You can join us for the Schizo stream on Friday night. Ethical skeptic. So he says, well, first of all, let's watch the video, and then we'll see what he's responding to. I'm going to speed this up just a little bit. Sorry to those of you who watch this on 2x later on. You just have to, I'll just let it play through so you can just slow it down for a minute.
The Egyptian artifacts make absolutely zero sense, and archaeologists might just be afraid of being wrong. How is it the further back in time we go, the more advanced they get? Egypt is old, like really old. Egypt is so old that even ancient Egyptians studied ancient Egyptian history thousands of years older than them. When the Romans discovered the pyramids, they were older to the Romans than the Romans are to us today. Woolly mammoths still roamed the earth when they were first built. And of course, everyone knows that Cleopatra lived closer to the invention of the iPhone, or hell, closer to you watching this video right now than she did to the construction of the pyramids. What?
And that's according to the standard model. Just got to inject here. That's according to the standard model. And I think the standard model is pretty clearly bullshit. They're much older than that.
Strange is that as time went on, their artifacts somehow got less and less advanced. The Egyptian Empire reigned for about 3,000 years, divided into approximately 31 dynasties classified into Old, Middle, and New Kingdoms. When we go back to the first 5 or so dynasties, the Old Kingdom, we see impressive feats of design engineering unlike any other. And impressive is an understatement. These are straight up machine perfect down to the micrometer. Like this round vase, perfectly balancing itself dead center on a point no larger than the tip of an egg. Except this isn't your pottery class vase made of clay. It's granite. And granite is harder than steel. That's a fact. Here are the numbers. Here's another vase, slightly chipped, revealing its walls are as thin as a playing card. Another bowl made from diorite, a stone as hard or even slightly harder than granite, whose walls are literally 1/40th of an inch or half a millimeter thick. We have no idea how to make granite pottery like this using known ancient methods, although high-tech machines could probably do the trick. But I don't think you realize how insane it is to suggest that this level of mechanical precision was achieved on granite using primitive tools softer than granite, the official claim. And these are just a few. There were over 40,000 of these artifacts found under the Step Pyramid of Djoser dating back to the 3rd or 4th dynasty, with some suggesting they're actually pre-dynastic, meaning they're even older, and the Old Kingdom Egyptians just inherited them from a previous civilization. Oh, we're in too deep now, Johnny boy. It's only in recent times when we finally analyzed them with modern light scanning technology that we found out how mind-bendingly precise they really are. They took a jar, did some measurements in a lab, and to this day, Egyptologists have no explanation for these results. The top of the vase was 3,000ths of an inch away from being perfectly flat, something only possible with like CNC machines today. For reference, a sheet of paper is 7,000ths of an inch thick. A human hair is 2 to 3. This thing was a literal hair away from being perfectly flat. The inside lip of the vase's mouth was 1/1000th of an inch away from being perfectly perpendicular to the top, which is a mathematically flawless right angle. And the entire vase was 13,000ths of an inch, which is still just like 2 sheets of paper away from being perfectly circular. These are legit CNC machine level perfections, mass produced over 40,000 times on a material harder than steel using copper and stone tools by hand. Oh, and they might be pre-dynastic before copper tools were widely even used. I don't see an ounce of logic in that. Okay, maybe this one was just a fluke, right? A one-off perfect vase as a result of mass producing over 40,000 of them. So they took more into the lab and found even more astonishingly accurate measurements, revealing alleged machine-calculated mathematical use of pi, the golden ratio, and more, again to within thousandths of an inch of accuracy. That's like that much. Everything from the flatness of the base, the roundness, and even the uniformity of the thickness of the walls was nothing less of CNC machine perfection. Justifying this by saying they were just really skilled or they had a lot of time does not explain this level of precision with the known tools and methods at their disposal. There are even some vases vases that are reportedly made from corundum, which is magnitudes harder than granite and sits right behind diamond on the hardness scale. Although this one is for some reason debated, a lot of people claim it isn't made from corundum, but still others insist it is. A single one of these pots would have likely taken weeks, if not months, given modern explanations. Shouldn't there be evidence of their highly precise techniques all over ancient Egypt? Oh, there was this. A hieroglyph outlining the sculpting of an alabaster vase, one of the softest materials ever, softer than marble, and totally possible with their tools. But it's been proven that the technique outlined here would not work with granite. Sure, cutting into huge slabs using rough and painstakingly slow techniques using those tools might be possible, as we've seen them desperately trying to prove, but the force of friction required to achieve that simply would not be possible on small, delicate artifacts like these, never mind how machine accurate they are. Some of these vases are as small as a thimble, not even practical, and even harder to make, almost like they were just showing off, like, look what we can do. One theory is that these vases were spun on some sort of grinding tool, for which they have no evidence nor recordings of, but that's completely blown out of the water with the lug handles on the sides here. It's pretty obvious that these wouldn't be possible from spin grinding. Absolutely no one can explain how these lug handles were made, which again, lab results showed that they too were perfectly symmetrical and level to each other to within thousandths of an inch. Later dynasties even tried recreating these jars, and although still impressive, are nowhere near the precision of the earlier ones. This level of advanced pottery is said to have reached its peak in the first two dynasties, and then poof, they just forgot how to do it, which leads people to believe these artifacts might be much older than anyone thinks. What if they inherited them from even earlier previous civilizations? And it doesn't end with these. There's also the schist disc, crafted from a single piece of stone. Tell me, what kind of stone can be shaped like this by hand? No one really knows what this is, said to be a bowl or a flower holder of some sort, even though it looks sort of mechanical. Recovered from a first dynasty tomb, and again thought to be even older than that. Then we get to the statues, and these somehow make even less sense. The face of Ramesses at Luxor. Several of these statues were made in honor of the pharaoh Ramesses. Engineer Christopher Dunn noticed that there was something off about these faces. They were perfect, but almost too perfect, and not in a human way. He took a photo of the statue head, made it 50% transparent, flipped it, and overlaid the left side on the right side. Doing this, he discovered the face was perfectly symmetrical. Centerline measurements confirmed this too. It's like half the head was carved, then copy-pasted to the other half. We see consistent eye-to-mouth profile ratios across all of these statue heads, something that we'd likely do with like 3D modeling programs today, computer accurate precision. Same thing with the crowns on their heads, and this wasn't done just once, but repeated among many statues. This isn't something that anyone could just eyeball, but experts insist they were all done by hand. Professional sculptor Mike Leckie even wrote in a letter saying that his modern diamond tools would have been well worn out before barely even starting to sculpt something like this out of granite, and states that it would have been borderline impossible to repeatedly achieve this level of accuracy time and time again using only the tools we have evidence of. What machining technologies did ancient Egyptians or even earlier civilizations before them possess that archaeologists just simply refuse to even consider?
So the ethical skeptic says, broaches the next question. Why would an age that had 0.003 of an inch tolerance in mass manufacturing of Mohs 7 material rely upon pottery in the first place? Akin to pedals on a bicycle bent with 200 foot-pounds of torque. If you had 200 foot-pounds of torque available, why did you need a bicycle? Ethical skeptic has been looking into some very interesting stuff recently, by the way, regarding the pole shift and the Janet Beckhoff effect. I can't remember if I did that on a show or if we talked about that somewhere else, but yeah, here's some of the stuff he's talking about. Definitely go follow the Ethical Skeptic. Also, if you want a more in-depth breakdown on, I mean, this guy was pretty thorough, but if you want an even more in-depth breakdown on these crazy vases, then check out these interviews here with Ben Van Kerkwyk. So he's from Uncharted X. This is him on Danny Jones' Concrete podcast. He was on Flagrant with Andrew Schultz. He and Randall Carlson talked about that and other ancient catastrophe stuff. These three conversations here will really give you the lowdown on this technology. There was a guy who did a study on it, and his conclusion was that the only way that these things could have been manufactured was with some sort of a Turing machine. And there's no evidence within the mainstream accepted model that you had like Turing machine capable production 6, 8, 10,000 years ago. But there's no other explanation for these devices. So yeah, there's a little schizo stuff for you. Now let's get into the last couple of things we've got. Close this tab. Last couple of things we got here is some Gundo stuff. So first of all, let's read this one here. Inside California's freedom-loving, Bible-thumping hub of hard tech. This is from Vanity Fair. This is written by Zoe Bernard, July 22, 2024. Many cities have aspired to be the next Silicon Valley, but here in El Segundo, home to an upstart male-dominated defense tech enclave, the founders are defining themselves in opposition to it. This is not, quote, San Francisco light, says one, or San Francisco plus a little bit of hardware. For over 2 years, in the small, unassuming beach town of El Segundo, dozens of young men have gathered with a singular mission: to save America. They will do this, they say, by building the next generation of great tech companies. They call what they are building real shit, not like what the software engineers make up north writing code on shiny MacBooks. Instead, these men have a taste for the tangible. They spend their workdays toiling in labs and manufacturing lines, their nights sleeping on couches and bunk beds. Some are making drones to try to control the weather. Others are building nuclear reactors and military weaponry designed to fight China, Russia too if necessary. Out in El Segundo, California, where the saltwater-tinged air thrums with steady plane traffic and oil refineries sweep across the shoreline, these founders have settled on a place where they can act as faithful foot soldiers of American industry, as well as bold incubators upending Silicon Valley's status quo. We're pollinating different ideas, Augustus DeRicco, the founder and CEO of the cloud seeding company Rainmaker, which has raised $6.3 million from venture capitalists in May, tells me. We're sick of nihilism and goofy software products. Behind him on Rainmaker's office wall hangs an American flag the size of a dumpster. Opposite is a life-size poster of Jesus Christ smiling benevolently onto a bench press below. Right now, he adds, Gundo is for hard tech what Florence was for art during the Renaissance. For decades, cities across America have aspired to assume Silicon Valley's mantle as the next technological hotbed. It was rumored for a short while that the entrepreneurial epicenter had shifted to Austin and then Miami. Before that, there was Silicon Valley in New York, or Silicon Alley in New York, and Silicon Beach in Los Angeles. When it comes to the Gundo, the technological zeitgeist is, like all of these places, fueled by venture capitalists who have invested more than $100 billion in defense tech companies since 2021, many of which are located in El Segundo. You can sometimes catch VCs wandering the warehouse-lined back alleys in hopes of snagging a meeting with an entrepreneur. So feverish is the financial frenzy that Gundo founders often joke about renting a double-decker bus, filling it with potential investors, and offering local tours. Zane Mountcastle meets with members of the United States military. But the founders are adamant that their city, despite its investment windfall, is not Silicon Valley's next act. In fact, it is ideologically opposed to what they consider the soft and comfortable world of the Bay Area and the lightweight commodities it now largely produces: corporate subscription software and trivial consumer applications. Quoting, "This is not San Francisco light or San Francisco plus a little bit of hardware," says Zane Mountcastle, the straight-talking CEO of the defense technology company PicoGrid. "It's a different world from San Francisco, and it has a completely different mindset." Mountcastle, who first started working in the Bay Area city of Livermore, saw that only a few years ago Silicon Valley had little appetite for companies that aid the military. At parties, when I told people what I did, he says, they'd be like, "What the hell is wrong with you?" Despite its proximity to Los Angeles, El Segundo is a factory town with a laid-back temperament. The city is home to less than 20,000 people and has deep manufacturing roots. Nearly 3/4 of its land is dedicated to industrial uses, including petroleum refineries, power plants, and aerospace manufacturers like Boeing and Lockheed Martin. It is imbued with Californian nostalgia. Patrons sip beer on bar patios alongside their dogs and the occasional parrot. Below billowing steam towers, the downtown streets are flanked with retro diners and vintage record shops. The founders in El Segundo have settled on an expansive terrain in which to express sentiments that might chafe otherwise progressive sensibilities. They have an outsized respect for their country and men in uniform. They love fast cars, tobacco products, and their Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. They are aspirationally blue-collar, often wearing blue jeans, clean leather work boots, and dark t-shirts with company emblems embroidered on their breast pockets. By day, the founders often trek to the Central Valley to launch drones into the airspace. By night, they can be found drinking Singapore slings at the Purple Orchid Tiki Lounge or burning pallets at Dockweiler Beach, chewing nicotine pouches and chugging energy drinks. I would not recommend chewing nicotine pouches. At the offices of the nuclear energy company Valor Atomics, there's another Tolkien term, where I was invited to attend a Bible study, Bibles were propped up on desks beside laptops. Valor Atomics' head of business operations, Elijah Froh, who is 26 years old and has the straightforward self-assurance of a car salesman, offered me a glass of raw milk, increasingly the drink of choice in many conservative circles. Then he led our small group in prayer and read aloud from a passage in Hebrews. Later, Froh invited me into Valor Atomic's cigar lounge, where actual cigars can't be smoked due to a permitting issue with the building. We sat in enormous leather armchairs beside a small table stacked with cigars sealed in Ziploc bags. On the wall hung 4 large classical paintings depicting Columbus discovering America, the Pilgrims arriving on the Mayflower, the signing of the Declaration of Independence, and the Constitutional Convention. Froh told me that God needed businessmen just as much as he needed missionaries, and that God had put them on this earth to build a nuclear energy company. Quoting, "A lot of people are seeing the societal value of religion," he said. During the 3 days that I visited companies in the Gundo, I saw 3 women and spoke to one, the wife of an employee at Valor Atomics who attended the Bible study along with her 2 young children. She had moved to a house near the beach with her husband 3 weeks earlier. When I asked if she was meeting with many nice people, she laughed and said she was too busy taking care of her children to leave the house. So this is the founders of PicoGrid, Martin Sloseric and Zane Mountcastle. Later, I asked a founder in the Gundo why he thought there were so few women. You're missing the point, he told me, claiming that this line of inquiry is a little boring. It's a non-thing. It muddies the story and distracts from our core mission of trying to save the West. Then he mentioned Catherine Boyle, a partner at the influential venture capital firm Andreessen Horowitz, who helped spearhead the defense tech movement. Boyle is, in fact, a woman. But more importantly, quote, she is awesome, he said. She's extremely sharp and observant. She's serious with a capital S, but not serious with a lowercase s. The Gundo founders, for their part, think of themselves as serious people who do not take themselves seriously. This, they say, is in contrast to those in Silicon Valley, unserious people who take themselves extremely seriously. Just about every company in the Gundo has a huge American flag in its office, but the biggest, an object of envy among all the Gundo founders, is on the wall of Olaf Hichwa and Soren Monroe Anderson's 15,000 square foot drone factory, Neros. Hichwa is a wide-eyed, toothy 22-year-old from the DC area. He dropped out of the Rochester Institute of Technology computer engineering program his sophomore year to build drones. In May, Neros raised nearly $11 million. In the Neros factory, Hichwa showcased his company's product, a wickedly fast drone that he maneuvered to terrifying heights above my head. Later, he showed me a video of Ukrainian soldiers detonating a bomb latched to a Neros drone on Russian artillery. Up close, the drones belie their potent capabilities. They are deceptively flimsy, almost like toys. The war in Ukraine has both legitimized and popularized the efforts of many founders in the defense tech industry, especially Palmer Luckey, the founder of Anduril. The Gundo founders speak of Luckey often and reverentially. In 2017, Luckey left Facebook. He has said he was fired for supporting Donald Trump. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg denied that politics was a factor in Luckey's departure. Today, he is vindicated. His company has been awarded multiple lucrative military contracts. This year, it is seeking a $12.5 billion valuation. In a recent interview, Luckey said that Silicon Valley's most prominent venture capitalists are investing in defense tech because, quote, the Silicon Valley bubble is going to collapse, and that left behind are going to be the industries that actually create value. Defense is one of those. So this is the Neros founders, Olaf Hichwa and Soren Monroe Anderson. Politically, Luckey is hardly a rarity. In recent weeks, many of Silicon Valley's most influential venture capitalists have rallied behind the former president, including Mark Andreessen and Ben Horowitz, Sequoia partner Sean McGuire, and All In podcast hosts David Sachs and Chamath Palihapitiya. Sachs and Palihapitiya were reportedly both instrumental in helping Trump pick J.D. Vance, who had a stint in venture capital as his running mate. It is felt that Trump is an essential player in Silicon Valley's investments in defense tech, but during my conversations in El Segundo, Trump came up only twice. When I asked Fro if he supported Trump in the 2020 election, he told me he couldn't remember who he voted for or if he had voted at all. Phil Ehrenstein, the voluble and charismatic founder and CEO of Dirac, an anti-software software company that generates assembly instructions for industrial manufacturers, told me that Trump was early to the idea that China would someday figure as the United States' greatest threat. Like many of the Gundo founders, the threat of the Great Red Dragon weighs heavy on Ehrenstein's mind. Sometimes he loses sleep over it. China wants to see the West and our way of life and democracy collapse, he says. People need to understand that their way of life is in danger. The stakes are serious. This is not a movie and no one is coming to save them. The El Segundo founders live in a world that is neatly ordered between heroes and villains, a world in which military might is a moral obligation rather than a national necessity. Quote, having an adversary is very interesting, says Arnstein, because it gets people to work harder. Sometimes it seems that the El Segundo founders are acting out of a studied caricature of nostalgic Americana, especially on Twitter, where they frequently post about smoking cigarettes, bench pressing, and loving their country. At least some part of the scene is pure performance. Quoting, it's totally intentional. You have to make it cool, says Cameron Schiller, the co-founder and CEO of the aerospace manufacturer Rangeview. What a last name. Cameron Schiller. We're trying to bring more young people into manufacturing. Schiller is tall and lean with the good looks of a Hollister model. He recently tricked out his office with a set of concert speakers, which he plans to use at office parties. Rangeview's office is tastefully decorated. It's lab lit with purple and orange mood lighting. In the office, Schiller points out a jet engine, a race car simulator, and a photo of Rangeview employees with Aaron Paul, the actor who plays Jesse Pinkman in Breaking Bad. In the photo, Paul and the employees are all dressed in matching lab coats. When I ask about the photo, Schiller tells me that the actor wandered in off the street one day. drones in the Nero's factory. Yeah, says Arnstein, who had accompanied me to Schiller's office. He was like, man, I heard you guys were cooking. Basically, says Schiller, he was like, I heard you guys have a lab. Can I come and check it out? The founders sometimes have private discussions about whether they're posting too much on Twitter. We don't want this to be a fad, says Arnstein. When I tell Isaiah Taylor, the 25-year-old founder of Valar Atomics, that the Gundo scene seems a little contrived, he shrugs. Maybe we just really like America, he says. In the Gundo, patriotism is theatrical, but it is not theater. Quote, for me, being patriotic is like asking me if I love my mom. Like, you love your mother, right? I don't know why we in the U.S. have such a hard time with that. Close quote. The tobacco products, the bench pressing, the jumbo-sized American flags, the devotion to God and country, all would be happening, he tells me, whether or not there's a spotlight on us. Taylor and I were having breakfast at a diner in the Gundo, and he was eating a country fried steak. He had been up late the night before at the Purple Orchid with some of the guys. Later, on the way home, they'd climbed into Dorico's utility van to get Kane's chicken. They'd lit up cigarettes, and someone began to sing the national anthem. He showed me a video on his phone. There they were, swaying side to side, their faces lit by the orange embers of their cigarettes burning in the dark. Together they sang, their voices earnest. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave? The song ended, and they yipped into the night. So that's the first one. The second one here is written by Michael Gibson. And I looked up Michael Gibson, and he is I'm going to have to share screen again. He is part of the 1517 Fund. We back dropouts, renegade students, and deep tech scientists at the early stages before anybody else. 1517 is... Let me see if there's any of you guys out there. Do you know what the significance of 1517 is? Does that year mean anything to you? I'm looking to see if there's any hints in the... up here. Fuck it, ship it. Drop out, dive in, start up. The 17-year-old dropped out of high school for Peter and built a game-changing new kind of computer. The freedom of no one is safe until the freedom of everyone is safe. So 1517, exactly. Catholic Orthodoxy gets it. I knew he would. That's the year of Luther's 95 Theses. And that's an intentional name. That's why they picked that. So he's the one who wrote this article. The next arsenal of democracy, a new generation of defense innovators emerges in El Segundo. The first thing you notice in El Segundo is how serene it is. Yet, as I take in the quiet charm of its main street, my mind is still withdrawing from the rattle-banging anarchy I left behind moments ago. Back on the Imperial Highway before the turnoff, planes landing at or departing from Los Angeles International Airport screamed overhead. Cars jostled, windows open, hard music ripping out. A sea of red brake lights flashed commuter frustration. One hell-bent diver darted across 3 lanes, no 4, and in defiance of honks and middle fingers made an exit from the freeway. Life in Los Angeles. I can confirm. I miss it. I had managed to exit with less drama, and now, in El Segundo, I wait peacefully at a red light. Considering the public church directory posted by the Kiwanis Club in the middle of the main intersection, 15 churches are listed. It dawns on me that maybe the highway exit was really a time machine. In 1903, the Wright brothers invented powerful flight in Kitty Hawk, but it was in California in the decades that followed that aviation soared. Lockheed, Northrop, and Douglas, just about all the names that became industry giants in aviation and then later in defense and aerospace, began here. On the Imperial Highway, as you drive toward the Pacific Ocean, you could still spot those old respected names on several buildings. But as with the theme building, that dated spider-legged flying saucer plopped down in the heart of LAX, one also gets the feeling that the utopian aerospace avant-garde of the 1950s has aged into the sclerotic bureaucracy of an outdated megastate machine. We're more than a century past the days when Donald Douglas founded his aircraft startup in the back of a barbershop on Pico Boulevard. Today, only one commercial aircraft maker remains in America, Boeing, and the wheels and doors are flying off. But something young and adventurous is stirring again in El Segundo. Southern California aerospace engineering might be coming back to life. Startup founders, top-tier investors, and prospective employees have heard the call to pay homage to the glorious past, flocking to the Gundo, as they call it, in a new migration of hardware freaks. The number of new startups in the Gundo may reach only the 20s, more mature companies tally higher, but no matter. The beacon signal is sweeping the horizon and reflecting its call off the skies. As Jacob Goodwin, a British investor from London, told me, the Gundo is the purest expression of American confidence. Only 5 years ago, practically no one in tech wanted to work in defense, let alone do anything involving atoms instead of bytes. Hardware is hard. As for defense, well, it wasn't just a bad career move, it was sacrilegious, the equivalent of working for Dow Chemical during the Vietnam War. Recall Google's employees revolting in 2018 because against their managers over a contract with the Pentagon called Project Maven. But now young engineers are flying in from around the country and cold knocking on workshop doors to get a chance to join a garage startup chasing the forgotten dreams of a spacefaring civilization. What sparked this shift? Some industry people note that the world has become a more dangerous place. Russia, China, and the Houthis, sure. But something deeper may be at work too. A zeitgeist flip starts with a question. Since when did anybody start calling this area the Gundo? I take a seat at a table at Wendy's Place, an old-fashioned diner just off Main Street. The time machine is in full effect. Big band jazz from the 1940s streams in the background on a radio, and 5,000-piece jigsaw puzzles made from Norman Rockwell's Saturday Evening Post covers have been solved, glued, and hung around the dining room. Locals in flannel shirts debate how far they can get on the I-10 on a single tank of gas. Aromas of burnt coffee and hash browns on the griddle mix in the air. I'm here to meet Augustus DeRicco, the 24-year-old founder of Rainmaker Technologies. His company flies drones high into the clouds in order to seed them with tiny particles that make it rain more in dry places. But he's also the showman, the self-described cult leader, he says it only half in jest, who coined the name the Gundo and sent it viral on the internet. I'm here to talk shop because my venture fund, 1517, was the first to invest in DeRicco's company. Much to my delight, talking with DeRicco always leads to further meditations on the state of the world. When he arrives, he comes through the front door of Wendy's Place with a devilish grin, sporting a fluorescent yellow safety jersey, the kind that is used to find guys buried in rubble, unlaced Nike high tops, and a lion's mane mullet last seen on construction sites in 1985. How are you, the waitress asked DeRicco as soon as he's seated in the booth. I'm blessed, he says, his standard response to small talk greetings, but the faint touch of the holy makes people pause and smile. In public, he is forthright about his faith. After winning one of Peter Thiel's fellowship grants for innovators with no college degree, DeRicco expressed his gratitude in similar terms on social media. Quote, I hope to use this to serve Jesus Christ, my country, and Rainmaker's mission to make Earth habitable. A fit, sun-tanned blonde in her 50s walks through the front door at Wendy's and recognizes DeRicco. Mr. Rainmaker, she yells as the screen door slams behind her. She's lived in El Segundo for 28 years and wants to sell her house and move to Florida. She thinks that DeRicco and some of the other startup founders should buy it. Why are you leaving California? Are the taxes too high? Taxes, government, prices, it's all gone to shit. Well, we've got to turn it around. Only Trump can do that, she says. It's remarkable, I reflect, that only 5 miles to the north in Venice Beach on the other side of LAX, she might get stoned for walking around with a MAGA hat on. Nevertheless, Trump or no Trump, DeRicco and his friends are determined to turn California and America around. DeRicco tells me, quote, there is a song, The Story of Tonight, in the musical Hamilton. And in the song, you have all the revolutionaries meeting in a bar talking about their ideas and how they're going to win the revolution. I view the Gundo as analogous to The Story of Tonight. Here there are like-minded people who are pro-America, who want to see a radically different and revolutionary future. It feels the way I imagine that Florence or Milan did during the 1400s. A tight, small, walkable place with surreal opportunities and brilliant people, all of them trying to totally change the shape and direction of the world. Only now the necessary rebellion is bringing hardware into the world. It would take a hard heart not to feel the allure of the revolutionary spirit, especially in song, but money is part of the equation too. Investment from venture capital firms has poured into defense startups over the last 3 years, more than $100 billion according to PitchBook data. In 2022, Andreessen Horowitz, a top-tier Sand Hill Road mainstay, launched its $500 million American Dynamism Fund, dedicated to backing companies that will, quote, build for America and restore its industrial base. Without a doubt, the extraordinary success of SpaceX, Palantir, and Anduril has inspired the next generation of startups and investors who seek fame and fortunes in hardware, weapon systems, satellites, space cargo, energy, and frontier computing. The out-of-whack cost ratio seen on today's battlefield suggests a real opportunity. War is too expensive for America, and startups think they can build success cheaper, better, and faster. It costs the U.S. $5,000 to make a single 155mm artillery shell. It costs Russia $600. The Houthis are launching unsophisticated drones to attack commercial vessels in the Red Sea. The missiles that our Navy fires to take out those drones cost $2.1 million apiece. Think also of the cheap spy balloon that China floated over the U.S. last year. Cruising at over 60,000 feet, it could not be shot down with guns, but required $500,000 a pop Sidewinder missiles. Even the U.S. is not rich enough to protect itself and its interests at those prices. Our supply chains are vulnerable too. The shadow that China casts over Taiwan has raised a sense of urgency in the effort to build critical technologies like semiconductors at home. COVID shortages have also revealed the fragility of relying on shipping components from Asia. But even so, and though these are all strong reasons, they do not fully account for the Gundo. Such factors can explain an uptick in business in Virginia Beach just as well, after all, so why the sudden beating of the patriotic heart south of LAX among the young? Quoting, "It's hard to put in a bottle the absolute passion and dedication everybody has here to rebuilding America and American industry," Isaiah Taylor says. Taylor is a close friend of Dorico's, a member of the Gundo Brotherhood, and the founder of Valar Atomics, a firm trying to make oil and gas by way of nuclear power. "We have a ton of fun, but there's an undercurrent beneath all of it. We hate the fact that America doesn't build things anymore. We're extremely angry about it. It comes out in different ways for different people, but it's a shared conviction that we must build things again. We are so back" is a common refrain heard in the Gundo. Also, with more vulgarity, "fuck it, we ball." The phrases get posted on social media or are spoken as celebratory statements. Often they're used somewhat ironically, as if a tiny win for a startup, the announcement of a new contract, say, represents the turning of the tide for a nation. But the defiance is a response to America's economic history over the past 50 years, in which stagnation and decline have shadowed the building of hard material things. Reversing this waning of American industrial creativity is at the heart of the Gundo culture. The fight to reverse stagnation comes in many forms, not just in technology. It's also in dress and philosophy. In the 1950s, when progress moved faster than today, the engineers building the future in Southern California were bespectacled men wearing white short-sleeve button-down shirts with black ties with yellow slide rules protruding from their shirt pockets. This was the 1950s, when everyone tended to dress the same, bought the same kitchens and cars, watched the same two shows on TV, waved to their neighbors, talked baseball, and remembered everyone's birthdays. But then we saw, of course, the enormous shift in the dress, lifestyles, and reigning ideologies of the ruling establishment in America, starting in the 1960s and 70s, but accelerating in the 2000s. What was once the counterculture, the graybeard poets, beatniks, psychedelic edge seekers, and political activists of the 1950s and 60s, has now become the ruling elite. The corporation, the state, the industrialists and bankers, the academics, the journalists, all tend to be faithful these days to what were once the bohemian minority views and ideals of the earlier era. Just think of the purple-haired DEI czar in human resources, or the tenured professor sporting a Palestinian keffiyeh. No idea how that's pronounced. Now, as the establishment, these rebels expect conformity to their pessimistic worldview of living less assertively under the shadow of vast impersonal forces. They embody on the deepest level a gloomy philosophy of history. Individual responsibility in this philosophy is ultimately an illusion, and the range of freedom has narrowed. It assumes that only governments and political movements, not particular men and women, have the power to save us from, to mention a few things that this worldview despises, overpopulation, structural racism, mountains of garbage, and hot weather. An antidote to this conformist establishmentarianism is to build right at the edge of science fiction, in earnest, in the name of the family, the nation, and even God, and preferably to do it in the Gundo. Quote, "There is a natural pendulum swing," Dorico tells me. "Kids are always going to be rebellious, and my cohort have been told for our whole lives, you will own nothing and you will be happy. You will have a remote email job. You will not see any meaningful technological progress in your lifetime. You will eat bugs." A lot of the Gundo is about bringing together high-agency, assertive guys who are rebelling against the narrative we've been fed for so long. This is Isaiah Taylor, the founder of Valar Atomics, a firm trying to make oil and gas by way of nuclear power. Sitting here holding his little girl. Reversing America's decline requires a hearty breakfast. At Wendy's place, Dorico orders coffee and 3 sides of bacon, which amounts to 15 slices. Nothing else. When his order arrives, it looks as though a whole supermarket-sized package of bacon has been sizzled crisp and tossed onto a plate. All 15 slices devoured, we walk through the smoky hollow, the heart of El Segundo, to Rainmaker's workshop and laboratory. Rainmaker's headquarters contains many of the items that one would expect to find in a frontier garage startup. Lab equipment, flasks, mad scientist liquid concoctions, prototype drones, and a wind tunnel to test them, and, a beloved staple for many young men in the startup game, mattresses tossed onto the floor. The room seems otherwise barren, save for a laptop charging. Which mimetic model are they modeling here? You guys should know, this should be very easy. They're very clearly modeling someone of note. But unexpected items catch the eye. On the walls in Rainmaker's main bullpen, I noticed an enlarged photograph of a 1950s military unit tasked with modifying the weather. Placed on a desk in front of computer monitors, I find a first edition book from 1926, Rainmaking and Other Weather Vagaries by W.G. Humphreys. Then, in the main room, one comes across a symbolic motherlode, a bench press, and a 10-foot tall American flag hanging on the wall. 3 weeks before my visit, Dorico co-hosted a defense tech hackathon in this space, which, despite being about the size of a Jiffy Lube garage, managed to pack in about 200 people for the event. Organized by a gang from a handful of organizations, 8VC, Entrepreneur First, Apollo Defense, they had 100 or so hackers fly in from New York, Washington, San Francisco, and even Canada to take part in a 24-hour event where people could show off their talent to build. They also squeezed in another 100 startup mentors and Defense Department officials. Quote, there were people who hadn't signed up trying to get in, Anish Goel explains later. Goel is one of the hackathon's organizers and a sophomore studying applied math at Caltech. Quote, we had investors pretending to be builders trying to get in. So many people showed up that we had to establish a point of entry ID verification process. Goel and his team had put on a defense tech hackathon just 4 months earlier in New York in November, but only 50 people came to that. The difference, he says, was the appeal of the Gundo. Augustus is responsible for like 95% of the Gundo buzz, Goel says. He is not just a young man, he is a culture. In Pasadena at Caltech, it's very old school. People are much older. It's a slower pace, more academic. But in El Segundo, everyone is on Zyn nicotine pouches. You're criticized if you're moving too slow, and you have to bench press 400 pounds. You wouldn't expect a guy who built a rocket propulsion system to also be the guy talking about how it's important to have kids when you're 20 or to be capable of lifting 400 pounds. Close quote. Andrew Bartholomew, an investor and former Marine, managed to slip past Goel's security into the hackathon. It was his first weekend after moving to Santa Monica to get more involved with the Gundo community. It was awesome, he says, a really fun, exciting blend of startup culture and defense tech. The mayor of El Segundo gave a speech to open it. He said that if you're an innovator trying to find a way to deliver groceries 10 times faster, go somewhere else. We don't want you here. We want people here who are going to make a difference. One company that Bartholomew invested in was based in Washington, D.C., but after attending the hackathon, the owners were so impressed that they decided to relocate to the Gundo. There's a rough but moving self-assurance to these young men, and it's mostly men driving these startups. My catch-up with Dorico finished, I rushed to make a flight home out of LAX. As my plane takes off and climbs out over the Pacific, I can see the rectangle of the Gundo out my window. Its craftsman bungalows and well-manicured lawns look precious and hemmed in by the smoke-belching Chevron refinery to the south, LAX to the north, and the Scattergood steam plant to the west, with its orange and white smokestacks puffing vapor over one of the most glorious beaches in all of America, where the Gundo bros meet on Friday nights to burn wooden pallets in a bonfire as the oil tankers offshore blink their lights in silence. Such a small place and with so few people. Does it have a chance to survive the colossal forces sapping California of its vitality? The debt, the taxes, the bureaucratic barbarism of the state's dysfunctional, regulation-obsessed government? Don't they know that history is determined by forces beyond their control? I fear that the Gundo may be California's last gasp of creative energy. We're just a couple kids in El Segundo, says Taylor, but it's always a small group of people that make history. It was decisions that individuals made that led to America's decline, so why not the turnaround? It's just people making those decisions. A week or so later, I called Dorico to ask him about the 5-bedroom house that the blonde lady at Wendy's place was trying to sell him. He's surprised that I remembered. He and some Gundo friends are finding a way to structure the loans and rent payments to cover the mortgage. It would certainly facilitate more of the frat house accusations, he says. Why does he think that a small group of people in a small town could change history? Because they always have, he says. So the reason I want to read these things and get these onto your radar is because this is an extension of the tech bro takeover. This is... I'm going to say something that is probably going to trigger some of you, but I'm just describing what's happening. We're watching the birth of a new military-industrial complex. This generation, these guys right now, are going to be the ones who are at the forefront of military technology for the next 20, 30, 40 years. And they have very different values than the last military-industrial complex. And it's not a coincidence that you're seeing this intersection of military technology and American patriotism and tech bro alignment to Trump. All of these things are connected. And the dark technology, the teleportation and zero gravity and 0-point energy and all these different things, all of these things are all connected. I don't know exactly how. I know some things, but I'm telling you, this is all connected. And it's not going to, like, these are forces of history that you can't stop. for better or worse, our guys who are openly paying lip service to our values, are the ones who are forming the core of the new military-industrial complex. That should tell you something about the priorities of the incoming military-industrial complex. These guys clearly is not entirely organic. I mean, the dude writing this piece is literally an investor. So obviously he's got a vested interest in making it look and sound good. Same with the American Dynamism with A16Z. They're directly invested in this. But ask yourself, why are they invested in this? Why are they promoting this? Listen to Mark Andreessen and Ben Horowitz talk about their problems with the Biden administration and read between the lines. This is not simply just like some tech bros who are dissatisfied with the regime. There are much deeper forces at work here. It's very obvious. If you understand you have to take in a lot of different threads and you can't over-index on any one of them. But the picture starts becoming very clear behind the scenes. That this runs much deeper than simply a certain part of the venture capital world deciding that they want to get involved in military technology and whatever. Like there's this is the marketing campaign. This is the public facing front of a much deeper movement against the regime. Straight Buster says, as long as it has our interests in mind, I don't give a fuck. Build the bombs. Right? Like, this is the other thing. I am going to lose my mind if I see another person refer to the tech bros and Vance and the influences behind Trump coming from Silicon Valley. If I see another person refer to these people as neocons, I'm going to pull my fucking hair out. Simply being willing to use the military, like thinking that we should have a strong military and that it has a role and should be involved in various different things, does not make one a neocon. This is retarded. Talking affirmingly about using the military, threatening other people with military force, and advocating for American interests through the military, or believing that the military should be used to protect American interests, is not neoconservatism. I don't know why. I don't feel like this should need to be said. These people are very obviously not neocons. Neocons hate them openly. The neocons are spazzing the fuck out. They're apoplectic. These guys also are directly jamming their thumbs in the eyes of the neocons aesthetically. I'm not that big of a conspiracy theorist. I can't get on board with the notion that the open avowed enemies of one group are actually the subversive proxies of that group. CB says, El Segundo is a cacophony of sirens, traffic, jet engines, and bass from an NWA song blasting net to you for good measure. It's as if modernity is driving the place into the sea with you on it. I don't understand what that means. All right, coming up on the 3-hour mark here, so I gotta skedaddle. We got 80 live watching still. I appreciate you guys sticking around. 73 likes. You guys have done well. I appreciate the likes. Do me a favor and subscribe to the channel. Follow me on Twitter at RealKingPilled. And join the Kingpilled Discord, kingpilled.com. Go join the Discord. Join us for the Schizo stream this Friday evening. And I've got a couple of very interesting interviews coming here in the near future. Haven't gotten them exactly nailed down yet, but I think you guys are really going to enjoy them. So, Catholic Orthodoxy says, they're so incompetent in public, but actually they're 4D chess genius subversives. Yeah, like quit assigning more power and influence to your enemies than they actually have. Which is a corollary of what I will leave you with. Stop fucking blackpilling.